Okay, welcome. This is a wet resume review workshop, which is honestly, it's one of my favorite presentations that we do because if you make different changes to your resume, it can really make kind of a major difference in how well you do in your job search. And most resumes that I look at can be improved by 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, and even 10 times. And what tends to happen with attorneys is they kind of get stuck in not knowing how to do a resume. No one ever teaches them how to do a resume. And they make certain mistakes, even when they're young in their careers, for example, law students, which we'll talk about today, or when they get more senior, they make the same mistakes. And typically the people that make a lot of mistakes that I'm going to go over today don't end up getting jobs and the kind of positions that they want. And they kind of wonder, like, they may say to themselves, oh, it's a bad job market. Oh, there's a recession or whatever, or people with better qualifications than myself are getting jobs and I'm not. And so, when you get yourself in that kind of rut, one of the smartest things to do is to look at your resume. You say, is there something I'm doing wrong? Your resume is really the main thing that people see when they're looking whether or not to hire you. And a resume needs to do a bunch of things that I'm going to go through today. I'm review several resumes today. A lot of them are going to repeat the same errors over and over again. And these are resumes that I believe could drastically be improved. And that if you make these sort of improvements, you're going to be much better off getting a position. And so I'm going to go through numerous examples today of different resumes and help you kind of build a sheet that I'll circle around to you with a URL after the call within the next day or so for people that are here to kind of learn about the different changes that you can make to your resume to improve it. And, just at the outset, I want to make sure that I highlight, these numbers. Resume can be improved by 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. It can also be improved incrementally, meaning you can make small changes to your resume, and those small changes could end up having like a major effect on how good your resume actually is and whether or not you're going to get jobs. And so, most people, and the things that we'll review today, are kind of going into their resumes blind and not necessarily understanding all of the rules that are going to make it much, much more effective. And in addition, most people kind of involve their ego in resumes. And so what does that mean? So that means if you involve your ego in your resume, you want to basically highlight things that make you feel good as opposed to what the employer is looking for in their hiring. So employers are looking for certain things that really have nothing to do with your ego. And the more you get your ego involved, the worse your resume typically is going to be. This is a business. So as a business, you need to think about what do I need to do to sell my product to a business? And law firms that I work with are businesses. And so they're businesses that respond to good offers. And so your resume is something that's an offer to a law firm. So it's an offer and it's a business offer. And you need to kind of think along those lines. It's not necessarily a chance to involve your ego in everything. It's how to make an offer to a business that a business will respond to, and as opposed to one they're not going to respond to. And so this is the way to think about it. You have to think about it as an offer for a business. Now, I've been doing what I do for over 25 years. I've reviewed literally hundreds of thousands of resumes. And because our company is a company that gets paid when law firms hire our candidates, there are certain things that I'm looking for that I know, like right off the bat, whether or not a law firm will pay for it. So you're getting today the benefit of like 25 years of insight. I don't think there's anybody in the world that's reviewed more resumes for marketability than myself. So that is a real benefit that you will get through this. Some people are just kind of watching on the sidelines because they don't want to be embarrassed with their resume. I'm not. All the resumes that were sent, we took off all the identifying information, so no one should be able to have any idea who you are based on your resume. So I've done my best, and I'll protect everybody's confidentiality data that submitted their resume. And some people are not interested in having their resumes reviewed publicly. Where is this stuff here that I wanted to show you? Maybe it's this one. I do offer private resume evaluations that take about a half hour. I'll put this in, the chat at some point if you're interested in that. and don't want to review your resume publicly. So this is a very popular service. Hundreds of attorneys use it each year, and it can help you if you want a more personalized resume where we talk about your background a little bit and what you're looking for. Okay, give me one more second here. I'm pulling some stuff up. Give me a second here for the resumes. Okay, so I'm going to start off going through the resumes that we have today, and we'll kind of go from there and develop something. So this first resume is from a law student. Now, typically our company doesn't help law students, but I thought that this particular resume was a good one to look at to start. It's making a lot of the same errors that people make, and lots of make consistently in resumes, and this resume needs a lot of work. The first thing I just want to say with this resume, it's well formatted, but there's certain rules that apply to resumes. So if you are in law school or less than 5 years out, you always lead with your school. So you put your school first when you're doing that. So you always want to make sure that your school goes first if you're a new attorney, a law student, or you have less than 5 years of experience. After 5 years of experience, you put your school at the end. And the reason is because after you have 5 years of experience, most firms are only concerned with what you've done, and they really aren't that concerned at all with your school. It kind of drops into the background, and so the experience you get during your first 5 years is really the most important thing for your marketability. So you need to lead with your experience and make sure that is something that the law firms see first. So this is good that it goes through experience, and then the education, and then it goes here into this person's work, which we'll talk about in a little bit. One thing I did want to bring up for this particular resume is that it goes 2 pages. So another major rule of resumes is a resume, I don't care how senior you are, I don't care how much experience you have, should always be 1 page. It doesn't need to go any more than 1 page. Older attorneys that are doing transactional work, which could be trade, patent, trademark, I guess is somewhat transactional, real estate, corporate, practice areas along those lines. People would have resumes like that, but should have a transaction sheet at the end that is an attachment, but the resume itself should always be 1 page. So anytime you go over 1 page, you're doing something wrong. Now, attorneys, by the way, that law students and attorneys should all look for, understand, is that as an attorney, your job is to catch someone's experience, catch someone's attention very fast, tell them what they need to know to make a decision, help them make the best decision possible, and then that's it. And that's what attorneys do with judges. An attorney working, writing a brief before a judge will not, if there's a 3-page limit for the brief, attorney has to make their points in 3 pages. They don't get 20 pages. And the standard for resumes all over the US is that they need to be 1 page. You can never make them longer than 1 page. And especially in this case, and this person's a law student, this goes over into 2 pages. So you definitely don't want a resume that's more than 1 page long. If it's more than 1 page long, you're doing something wrong. As an attorney, you're also expected to be able to take lots and lots of information, regardless of whether you're a corporate attorney or a litigation attorney or whatever your practice area is. Attorneys are paid to take a lot of information and reduce it to something that is much more palatable and easy to understand. So everything has to be easy to understand. One of the biggest mistakes that I see out of lots and lots of attorneys, whether it's in-house attorneys and law firms, is just putting too much information in a resume where people cannot figure out what you're doing or what you want to do. And in addition to putting a lot of information on the resumes, there's often no focus in terms of what the person wants to do. So what does focus mean? So, oops, here we go. That's another batch of resumes. What does focus mean? Focus just means that your resume looks like you're doing one thing. So focus means you look like you're doing one thing, want to do one thing, and are committed to doing one thing. So if you look like you do one thing, that could be real estate law. If you should look like you want to do that based on the things you've done, the society or groups you belong to, the commitment you've shown earlier in your career, throughout your career, and just basically that commitment. So an example would be, for example, a law student. A law student may have been in the worked for energy companies before law school. or law school. And then when they get to law school, they take a lot of classes, energy law classes or whatever ones they can. They join groups related to it, groups related to energy law. And then in addition to joining, I'm just looking for something here. In addition to joining groups related to energy law, they try to take positions doing something related to energy law in law school, summer jobs. And then in addition to that, they may write law review articles about it, and then they may, I'm just trying to think of what someone that wanted to do energy law, not work for an energy law professor, just anything that looks like the law student is interested in energy law. So if you are going into law school or are a law student and you make your resume look like this, then you have a very, very good chance of getting hired by law firms to do energy law. Excuse me, yes, that rises up and down sometimes automatically. So then you have a very good chance of getting something related to energy law, which is what you should do. Now, why do I talk about energy law or something like this? Well, this sort of focus for a law student is the same sort of focus that an attorney needs when they start practicing. Law firms typically, not always, will hire specialists. And so what that means is law firms and clients expect people to be working on matters that have a lot of experience in that particular practice area. They want people that have good backgrounds, that have goals, that want to do something related to that practice area. And that's really what they want. They want attorneys that could be experts, that are enthusiastic about a practice area, and that are going to really commit to a practice area and be committed. And people that show that commitment, whether or not they're an attorney trying to get a job in-house with an energy company, or they're a new attorney trying to get a job with a firm, law firms are going to hire people that know what they want. Now, there's something else I want to bring up for you just kind of at the beginning here. And this is a very important thing. And it's something that, you need to really absorb and understand, because this is the problem that I see with most attorneys. Most attorneys have goals. They have no goals. And what does that mean? Without goals, they have no goals that are specific and measurable. So what does that mean? Most attorneys in law school do not say, I want to be a litigator with a major law firm, or they say, I want to be a federal judge. I had one girl that I went to college with, and from the time she was a freshman in college at the University of Chicago, her goal was very simple. Her goal was, I want to be a federal district judge. That's it. That was her goal. She wanted to be a federal district judge. And so what did she do? She got the best grades. She worked for judges in college. She went into litigation, which is what judges should do. She everything she could possibly do to be a federal judge. She knew that's what she wanted right at the beginning of her career. And she started figuring out, what does it do to get to that goal? What do I need to do? How do I need to do it? Unfortunately, she's basically unlike 90 to 95% of attorneys. 90 to 95% of attorneys, basically they get hired, do what they're told, and never have strong long-term goals. When you have strong long-term goals about what it is you want, you're going to figure out how to get there. And the best people, I like to watch a lot of, I go on YouTube, and I like to exercise an hour or so a day. And I always will watch videos interviewing billionaires and all these people that are very successful. And without any doubt, they will tell you that at some point early in their careers, they had a goal. They had a goal to do something, and it doesn't necessarily matter what it is. I watched one yesterday. I didn't watch the whole thing, but it was talking about this, guy that was worth billions of dollars in Russia, and he decided he wanted to do energy law. That's why I bring this up today. Or not energy law, but be in energy. And so he had a very successful business when he was young, making effectively millions of dollars a year. He went back to school to a institute of energy and that taught energy related things, from a smaller market to a larger market. And he gradually made connections, and that was his only goal, was to be like a tycoon in the energy industry, when at the time Now, this is before the Soviet Union collapsed. There were no opportunities, but he knew exactly what he wanted. Another story of a goal, very interesting. There's a famous talk online. It's with Arnold Schwarzenegger when he's giving a speech, and I think he was giving it to some Goldman Sachs education business seminar type thing that they hold for successful entrepreneurs. And his goal was very, very simple. He was in a small town in Austria where his only options basically were to go to high school, graduate, and then go to work making things in factories and that sort of thing. That was his goal. And so that's what he had in front of him. So he started watching movies and he saw pictures of skyscrapers and all these incredible things that didn't exist in Austria and the United States. His first goal was, I want to move to the United States. Then he was walking around in a small town and walked into a magazine store, and he saw a cover with this guy that had these huge muscles and was a bodybuilder, and that also made movies. So his goal then became, I'm going to move to the United States, get this massive body and make movies. And so he started lifting weights all the time. People were like, what are you doing? Why are you lifting weights so much? What is it? Why are you doing this? Why are you working twice as hard as everyone? And he said, because I'm going to use this to make myself successful. And then he won the Mr. Universe contest at the age of 19. He moved to Los Angeles, started taking all these acting lessons because he knew he wanted to be an actor like this guy that had built with these big muscles. So his only goal was to move to the United States, become a bodybuilder, and get into movies. That's what he did. And he started off in small movies, and then he got into larger movies, and then he became very, very famous. And then he decided, well, I can't be president of the United States because I'm not born here, but I can be governor of California, the sixth largest economy in the world. And he did that. And those are all very, very simple goals. But without that goal, without any of those goals, he never would have moved to the United States. He never would have become this incredible bodybuilder, and he never would have been in films, and he never would have been governor. He just had goals. And this is what every successful person does. So as an attorney, you can't get swept up in this world where you don't have goals, where there's just where you're not standing for something, where you don't know where you want to go. You have to have goals. And the problem with most resumes is they don't show that that person has goals. You should have a goal. You should not go into the legal profession and start work without some sort of goal. You need to have goals. Lots of people talk about a famous book called Think and Grow Rich, which I keep bringing up. That talks about goals. It talks about persistence. It talks about all the things you need to have. But your resume is never going to get you anywhere if it doesn't reflect goals and if you don't have goals. And if you have goals, then your resume will show those goals, and it will and people will see those goals when they read it, and they will like it. They will hire you because it looks like you want to go someplace and you want to be something, instead of having a resume that's all over the map, confuses people, and shows people that you have no idea in hell what you want to do. And that, by the way, is 99% of resumes. 99% of resumes give no indication of where you want to be. So you need goals. You need goals like crazy. You need to make sure that you have big time goals, and then you need to make sure that you know what those goals are. There's a website that's actually free that I will tell everyone about right now because it's free. I like it. I think it can help you. It's called Hero on a Mission, and it's free. Like, all you need to do is click the online planner. It will take you through a goal setting exercise where you set 1-year goals, 5-year goals, 10-year goals, goals for your life. You write your obituary and all these great things. And you can also read the book Hero on a Mission, but this will show you how to have goals. And when you have goals, you look at them every day. You make sure you continually look at them, because there's something in our system that makes it, when you're constantly reviewing your goals, it makes you understand, it brings them to fruition. Like, you don't know how you're going to move from working at a 8-person law firm to a major American law firm. But if you have a 10-year goal, you're going to figure out what you need to do, but you have to have a goal. And it is in the legal profession. I'm sorry, I'm not sharing the screen for this. Give me 1 second. Maybe I am. Oh, here we go. In the legal profession, you need to make sure that you, and this is it's just tier one admission, it will allow you to plan goals. You need to absolutely make sure that you have goals and that your resume shows it. I cannot emphasize this enough. I don't, I want to, really help you get the most out of today, and how you're going to get the most out of today is if you understand the first thing, that your resume needs to have goals. Please, please, please write your resume in a way that has goals. And please, please, please make sure that you write down, you have 5-year goals, you come back, you have 10-year goals, you come back. And the other thing that's important about goals, and this is all about related to your resume, the only thing that's important about goals is you don't just say, I have a goal and that's what I want. You need to ask yourself, what kind of person would I need to be to achieve these goals? So to achieve these goals, and you have to think about that, and then you have to figure out what you need to do to change to achieve those goals. This was something that I heard. I'd actually never heard that. It's from John Asseroff, I think, a guy that became a billionaire, and how he got from nothing, being a horrible student, to starting out as a real estate agent for someone he met by chance. And he told them this: what kind of person would you need to be to achieve those goals? And so, again, goal setting is the most important thing. It will reflect on your resume. And if you have goals, you need to make progress each day towards that goal. That's all you need to do. I was working in a law firm once where there was a famous, it was the first law firm I worked with, and there was a very famous real estate attorney named Hedges. I think it was John Hedges, or I don't know, and he was a very famous real estate attorney. And there was a guy that had joined Quinn Emanuel that was just hired kind of as a litigator, but his goal was to be an entertainment lawyer one day. And so when that entertainment lawyer came to Quinn, and the firm name was changed from Quinn Emanuel, Urquhart, Oliver, and Hedges, because this guy was so important, he did everything he could to get close to him. He did everything he could to do work for him, even if he wasn't getting hours. He did everything he could to meet his clients. He did everything he could to try to get close to him, even though he wasn't an entertainment lawyer. He did all this work for this guy, and eventually became a very well-known entertainment lawyer. And this is what all very smart people do. They have goals. And so your resume needs to reflect goals. So this first resume right here, when you look at it, this person talks about mergers and acquisitions, class they did well in. They talk about doing cyber threats work. They talk about, let's see here, cyber threats. They talk about doing immigration law. They talk about what else here, just in the beginning, they talk about all these things that are just all over the map. They talk about working in a court, which is litigation. Then they talk about doing international tax and tax pricing or tax transfer pricing. Then they come in here and they talk about business organizations and books. Then they come in here and they talk about tax. Then they come in here and they talk about quantitative analysis associate. Then they come in here and they do sort of the same thing. And there's a lot of stuff here, by the way, about data analytics, which is actually very interesting. And I'll talk about that in a moment. And then they talk about business writing. They talk about legal research. They talk about data science. They talk about leadership certificates. All of these things are all over the map. And they talk about these interests, which are kind of fun. I have no problem with those. I have no problem with these, fluency in these different languages. But the problem with this resume is it's all over the map. You have no idea by looking at this resume what this person, and then they talk about a technology law journal. You have no idea from looking at this resume what this person wants to do. It's just, there's nothing consistent in it. Like if the person wanted to be a litigator, everything would be about litigation. If the person wanted to be a data science attorney, it would have to be about that. If the person wanted to be an immigration attorney, I would have to talk about that. Oh, I missed one, real estate law. So the problem is everything on this resume just reflects all these different interests. And that's not good, because if I was a law firm and I got this, I would say this person has no idea what they want to do. And because they have no idea what they want to do, if I hire them, I will just put them into something that, anything, but I don't know if they're going to stay. I don't know if they're interested in it. I just have no There's nothing consistent about it. Now, this resume, by the way, can be fixed. It can be fixed because there are some consistencies, but the problem with this resume is very similar to a lot of resumes out there, because it goes into all of these discussions about things that have nothing to do with what would be consistent for this person. So is this person, did they join the Immigration Law Society because they want to be an immigration attorney? Did they join the Real Estate Law Association because they want to be a real estate attorney? What's going on here? Did they get the best grade in their mergers and acquisitions class because they wanted to be a corporate attorney? I just don't know. And no one will know. It's just no one has any idea what this person wants to do. And that's the problem. Like, this is the problem with almost every resume we're going to view today. It all goes back to goals. What does this person really want to do? What is their goal? How can we put that goal? How can we make that goal stand out? And how can we hire someone that knows what they want to do? So what is the problem for law firms when they hire people that don't know what they want to do? When people don't know what they want to do, they get into a law firm and they think, well, hey, I'm not enjoying corporate mergers and acquisitions. I really feel my calling is immigration law or real estate law. They get in, they have no idea what they want to do. And so because they have no idea what they want to do, they will often bounce around between jobs. They will not be fully committed to whatever they're doing. They just don't know. They just don't know. Now, why be a jack of all trades? So what are the benefits? What are the benefits of being a jack of all trades? The benefits of, sorry, of all trades. The benefits of being a jack of all trades, I guess, you can do a lot of things okay. Maybe you can work for a smaller firm, where the clients don't care if you're an expert. Clients don't care if you're an expert, and maybe. But you're going to, what you're going to do is you're going to box yourself into smaller firms with no focus that will never grow. So I want to just give you, what's going on here? I want to give you a couple of insights into different types of law firms so you can understand where your focus is going to take you. So I don't know what's happening here. Try to turn this to the next page. Let me see. Okay, well, whatever. So all these formatting issues. I'm going to just continue here. Okay. Well, so here's kind of how the legal industry works for law firms. Legal industries, law firm. So, well, my goodness. All right, I'm sorry, this is not working for me. Okay, so in the law firm legal industry, what happens is you have solo practitioners in small markets. They do whatever walks in the door, often. Oh my goodness, this is not good. Let me just say, okay, I'll just do it this way. So solo practitioners will do whatever walks in the door. And what does that mean? That means that a solo practitioner could be trust estates, it could be, litigation, whatever. But there's never a lot of money most of the time, unless the person is a specialist, almost never. So, because a solo practitioner, those clients aren't going to pay a lot, but they're not going to be sophisticated, because sophisticated clients are going to work for larger firms. Now, there are exceptions. I'll tell you kind of what the heck this has got, like a double column going. It's something that I'm going to need to probably open a different Word document. Give me 1 second. Okay, so solo practitioner, and the reason I'm showing you this is because I'm telling you where your resume is going to lead you. Solo practitioner, again, whatever walks in the door. And they can never do a good job in anything because they never become an expert, but they work for smaller clients. Now, some solo practitioners, there are exceptions to that, and I'll tell you what they are. They're solo practitioners, and I'm just telling you where your resume is going to take you without focus. So if you have no focus, you can get a job with solo practitioners often. No focus, you can do this type of work for them or on your own. A solo practitioner exception is someone with a focus. So I'll tell you two stories. I'll tell you two stories just real quickly about solo practitioners with focus. So there are people on this call, because I've looked at their resumes, that went to unaccredited law schools in California that entitled them to take the bar maybe in California and New York, and that's it. And those law schools often are law schools at night, they're virtual, all that sort of thing. And then on this call, there's people well up to people that went to Harvard and Yale and all that sort of thing, because there's a lot of people, almost 1,000 people on this call. So you have different types of people. But if you are a solo practitioner with focus, here's what happens. I know of two people in Malibu where I live. I was looking, I have a friend that owns a building, and I was looking at office space a couple months ago. And she told me that there was a guy that has been out of law school for like 4 years, decided he was going to specialize in nothing but doing trust and estates, was from Malibu, so he knew some families and different people, and got started on this job doing nothing but trust and estates, learning about it, concentrating on it as a solo practitioner. And then, 3 or 4 years, he went out and bought a $5 million house in Malibu for cash, and was making money head over heels because he was focused. And again, I think he went to Loyola Law School in Los Angeles, which is a good law school, but he's certainly doing much better than anyone that graduated from Harvard Law School or Stanford and has been working in firms for 5 years. He did that because he had a focus. That's it. I know another woman that I'm actually pretty good friends with. She got out of Southwestern Law School, which is not a highly ranked law school. It's a local law school in Los Angeles as well. No one would hire her. And she was a Canadian citizen and realized that, immigration was a difficult thing for her, getting her green card and everything to come over to the US, and thought, wow, immigration looks like something I could do. No one would hire her, but she decided she was going to focus on that. Let's fast forward 7 years. She's got an immigration firm that employs like 50 or 60 people, 20 of them attorneys, does like 30, $40 million in revenue per year, lives in a house built by very, very famous architect. Is basically a museum, and has done very, very well. That's because she had a focus. It didn't matter where these people went to law school. It didn't matter, who they were. It didn't matter how smart they were or how well they did in the SATs or LSATs. They had a focus. It's that simple. Like, that's the power of a freaking focus. And both of these people said, I'm going to be the best I can do, be the best immigration attorney in the country. I'm going to be the best, whatever. So, and they were able to take their careers, even without anybody helping them only helping themselves by having a focus. So once you start moving to larger firms, like say, large, small firms, or, larger firms, 20 attorneys and so forth, they're going to have more focus. That the attorneys are going to have more focus. And then as you start moving into, mid-sized firms, even more focus, more focus. And then largest firms, the most focus. So what does that mean, the largest firms with more focus? That means you don't just do corporate law, you do corporate M&A for companies in the biotech business. You're just very, very focused. And the reason the large firms have the most focus is because clients of the largest law firms want to hire people that have the most focus. Like they know exactly what they're doing. And it's, very, very, very well-defined focus in one practice, very well-defined in one practice. Because imagine like you were a business that did billions of dollars a year in revenue. Well, if you were to hire an attorney, you would want someone that did absolutely nothing but that, was an expert in exactly what you needed, no BS, wouldn't have to learn up to speed, was just incredibly well focused. And that's why the largest law firms are the largest law firms, is because their attorneys there are very, very focused, and big businesses want to pay for it. Mid-sized firms, by the way, are often, they're in middle markets, they charge less. A corporate attorney in a mid-market firm might do if you were to take corporate, they might do a corporate, a corporate M&A, then maybe general corporate, maybe some securities law, because the clients aren't as big and don't expect as much expertise. And the same thing with the larger firms of 20 attorneys. Maybe they're doing a little bit more focus, but not as much. And it's also the same thing. I don't want to get into too much more detail with you. I don't want to, but your large markets, which are New York, LA, and so forth, the most focused, right? Because there's lots of clients there and they want more focus. And then your smallest markets, less focused. So what does that mean? That means, I just remember one time I was writing a book about attorneys. And this is when I was in law school, because I knew I wanted to be an expert in what attorneys did. That was a goal I had, which is very interesting to me. I went into a very small market, and I believe it might have been like Lancaster, Pennsylvania, or something along those lines. But I went into that market and was interviewing attorneys. And it was the same thing. They would do personal injury, they would do corporate, they would do trust and estates. And that's what happens in the smallest markets. But if you want to move to, your middle markets might be Detroit, things like that. But if you want to work and be more, the most specialized, it's often in your best interest, if you want to work in large cities, to be more specialized. And just think about what would happen with a doctor, right? So a doctor. So you have, you're in small town, you have cancer, right? So the doctor in your small town is going to be a generalist, right? So he's not going to be able to, or she's not going to be able to really treat your cancer. So she's going to refer you to a larger hospital. And then if you really want to get, this is what rich people do, and then maybe in a bigger city, right? She's going to do that, or locally, but at a bigger city. And then if you don't like the larger hospital, you're going to seek out, someone from I don't know, Sloan, or the Mayo Clinic or something in Ohio, where there's more experts. So if you have a lot of money, so this is what clients do. So clients will select the people that they can afford that are the biggest specialists. And so you go to the Mayo Clinic, someone's going to be, say you have, I don't know, let's hope not, pancreatic cancer. And, there's going to be an expert for nothing but that in the Mayo Clinic, right? So, and this is, how you need to think about your job. Do you want to get lots of money from clients, or do you want to be in this role where you're kind of like a small town doctor doing a lot of things, not making a lot of money and so forth. So this is your choice. Your choice is going to be determined by your resume and the goals that you have for yourself in your career. So do you want to be a generalist with a small town sort of opportunities, or do you want to move to a bigger and bigger firm where you can be more and more of a specialist? Do you want to be struggling and not doing well as a solo practitioner, which, by the way, anyone can do. I know an attorney from Stanford that was a litigator in a big firm and decided that he was going to do family law and became one of the best known family law attorneys in Los Angeles, makes millions of dollars a year. I mean, all you have to do is just focus on having goals. And I can't emphasize this enough. This alone, if you understand this, can change your life and change your career with this focus. And this is what these resumes we're going to look at today are often doing wrong. They don't have the sort of focus that you need to be successful. Okay, so let's get back to this resume. This is not the resume. Again, I apologize that we wanted to start with. We'll go back to that again. And by the way, when we're done with this, we will have questions. So we will stay, as long as it takes to answer questions. So if you have specific questions about your resume, this is not the resume again. Let me see here, resumes for review. Okay, so this is not, all the resumes. If you do want to send me your resume during the call, and I think it looks interesting, and you take off your personal information, you can send it to Harrison. I'll do this at the break. barristerconsulting.com. If there's questions that aren't answered. Okay, so this person's resume, as we said, there's no particular goals. The person's doing a lot of things, but if you look at this resume and you edit it, it could be actually very, very good resume. But I'll talk about how to do that and how I would change this. And this is what I would do for this person if they were to sign up for resume review or whatever it would be. Okay, so let's talk about when people list different activities on things on their resume, whether it's from school or whatever. Those resumes, first of all, you don't want to put anything on your resume that draws attention to a lack of achievement and excellence. So what does that mean? You don't want to say in your resume that you got a 3.1 grade point average if that's like the middle of the class. No one cares. That's actually saying, hey, I'm proud of being average. You don't do that with any school. You list your grades and so forth if you finished in the top 5% of your class or top third at a top 10 law school or something, but you certainly do not want to draw attention to things that aren't excellent. So this particular award this person received when they got the highest grade in one class, that means that they didn't get the highest grade in other classes. So that's drawing attention to that. And this is how lawyers think. Lawyers are like, they look at things and they find weaknesses. So I would take that out. You don't need to say anything about that. Now, I actually like this technology stuff. I'm going to tell you why in a minute. I have absolutely this person, unless this person wants to be an immigration attorney, then this should come off. This does not give confidence in this person as as someone that wants to do something that we're going to find a theme here of what the person wants to do. You don't put all these associations, by the way, like joining an association. I mean, when I went to law school, I was the vice president of a group. I'm not going to say it was Democrats or Republicans because it doesn't matter, but I was vice president of this for the entire law school, business school, the all of the graduate schools, meaning thousands of people. But I didn't put that on my resume. First of all, I didn't put that on my resume because why would I tell every employer that I was a Democrat or Republican? And why would I be proud of something where there were only like 4 or 5 meetings the entire year, and all I did there was go basically give an update about what the group, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. If you're in the Immigration Law Society, it's not like you're having all of these meetings talking about immigration law, and the same thing with real estate law. These are not things that people are interested in. It's just, you may be interested in it. Now, if it was related to technology, that would be interesting because we're going to talk about that in a minute, but that doesn't really lead you anyplace. Now, this study abroad thing, people put that on the resume too. That is not something that most attorneys are going to be interested in seeing. All this says is I had the money to travel to a foreign country and support myself or be supported while I was in law school. And I decided, that I didn't want to do that. And I took, 3 months to go to another country. I don't know that that's something you want to draw attention to, but it's possible. Because let's look here. This person talks about cyber threats, comparative law regulating war. I actually like that, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I like that because this is kind of a theme that's going through the resume. You have technology, cyber stuff. Then you have data analytics and all this stuff that the person majored in, which I like. I like this because this starts emphasizing the theme of something to do with what this person's probably interested in is cyber threats, technology, and so forth when they do that. So let's get into the experience that this person's listing. This person lists that they're a federal court intern. Now, when you start listing things on your resume that you did in law school or before law school, everybody knows that someone that's doing an internship in a court and all this sort of stuff is most likely just, doing things related to this type of research. People do not need all this detail. All you need to say is that you were, an intern in the U.S. District Court. Now, here, you're talking about working for a magistrate instead of a district judge. Here, it looks like you could be working for a federal district judge, which is more prestigious than working for a magistrate. So I wouldn't even put anything about the magistrate. I would just put you were a federal court intern. That's fine. But does this thing you've been doing since May of 24, does this improve like what you would want to do when you went to a law firm? Does this support, what the theme is and what you're interested in, and what you did as an undergraduate, and what you did in all these jobs? Does this support that? And I don't think it does. I think saying you worked on business organizations and media disputes and all this stuff, this is all related to litigation. So does this support what your resume looks like? It suddenly takes someone that, if you look at this here, it's all technology, cyber threats. It suddenly takes someone who looks like they have a real focus on this in law school and puts them into a position where now they look like they're interested in litigation. So then you have here, and this person's doing tax and transfer pricing. So I do not like that. I don't like that. That has nothing to do with what the theme is here so far, which is this interest, cyber threats, and all this stuff. So I would not put any of this information on there. It's good to show that you worked during law school. I like that. I like that you got this experience. But I would try to, whatever this stuff you were doing is, I would just say intern. I mean, why do you have to? Whatever the company is, you don't want to draw people away from what your focus is. So all of a sudden, an employer looking at it thinks maybe this person wants to do litigation. Maybe this person wants to do this. So I don't even know that you want to list that you were an intern because you're drawing people away from that. You're saying, I worked during school. I was interested in litigation. If it were me and I was advising you and you were paying me $500 for 30 minutes of my time to review your resume, I would take this off. And I'm just showing you, I'm going through the process that, and this is free, so you can get all this advice in this presentation, and it will be recorded and online later. But you're getting all this advice, and my advice for you, and this is what I would do, I probably, unless you want to be a litigator, like if you decide you want to go to court and be a litigation attorney, you can list that, but you don't need to put that here. You're basically, you're talking about going to do a litigation. So the idea with a resume too, by the way, is, when an employer, here we go, doing this again. When an employer looks at your resume, and think about, I want everyone to think about this. When an employer looks at your resume, they need to get a sense. Oh God, Buzzkiller is doing this. But when an employer looks at your resume, they need to get a sense of what you want to do. So employer needs a scent, and the scent means scent. And the scent means you look at something, you smell a pattern, and that's what it is. So, example, do you smell oranges? Or do you smell oranges and bread? Do you smell apples? Or do you smell apples and also lemon? I mean, you have to have one thing. You want people to smell lemons, or you want them to smell that, because that makes it look like you're committed to something and you actually know what you want to do. So many resumes are making this problem. People look at it and they don't smell any sort of pattern. They don't know what the person wants to do. And why would you hire if you're an employer? If you're an employer and you had an opening for a corporate attorney, would you hire someone that had a bunch of stuff on their resume about being a litigator? Would that be a good use of your hiring? Or would you hire someone that looked like they wanted to, what they wanted to do? Because someone that knows what they want to do probably likes what they're doing, and they probably are going to continue to improve. They're going to be excited about the work you give them, and they're going to want to learn, and they're going to get better and better and better. And that's the whole key of being an attorney, is focusing on something as opposed to many things. I mean, it's insane when you think about it. Okay, so let's keep going through this resume. So now this person right here, you can see they were a research assistant for in a mediation clinic, which here we go again, it's more litigation. And, is that necessary to put in all this stuff that's detracting from what I believe is the strength of this person's resume? You just say, I was a research associate, and you don't put in all this crap, and I'm sorry it's crap because it's not going to help you. You don't put all this stuff in about business organizations and so forth. Now, you can go in one direction. So if this person wants to be a corporate attorney, then all they need to do is they need to put this in where they talk about business organizations, and then they can talk about tax, I guess, if they want to be a corporate attorney. And then they could only talk about this mergers and acquisition stuff that they did. And maybe some of this technology stuff could be related to corporate law. So they have to make the resume do one thing. Now they talk about tax and housing again, tax again. So they talked about tax here. They've talked about tax here, and then and then it could be a tax resume, but it's got to be something. So you go in here and now you have whatever this is. And this person worked for, oh my God, desk keeps going up. It's kind of embarrassing. So now you get in here, and this person was a quantitative analytics associate, which is actually very interesting. But they only did it for May, June, July. They only did it for 4 months. And, and it was in 2022. So were they in law school? I guess, would that be law school? Yeah, so they were in law, they were in law school, in the law school. So sure, data analytics intern, that's great. That's all you need to put. If you were there for 4 months, I don't think you were leading a department and upskilling 125 associates and interns. I don't think that that's true. But, you need to say something, but, maybe you just say a little, because you don't need to put a lot of, information into all the stuff, because again, you're trying to fit this freaking resume into one page, and you're trying to develop something that's consistent and makes sense. This is about tax. So, and this is about writing. So again, you did it for 3 months. Unless you want to be a litigator, I don't think that, or a tax attorney, I don't think that helps you. So you take this, you don't have to put on your resume everything you did. Now, this was a summer job, it looks like. So you may want to put it in, but you don't need to talk about litigation again, unless you want to be a litigator, you take that off. This is very good. This is looks like you did another one where you were doing quantitative analytics, which I like actually, and I'm going to show you why in a minute. But again, you don't need all of this information. No one cares. They care that you have the job, but they don't care about all the information there. Now, here we go. So now the person talking about being a data analytics, research and data sciences intern, that's fine. If you were paid or not paid, again, I like that, but you don't need all of this information. You just put this little amount there. And, I guess associate, okay, intern, that's good. And then here you worked for 5 months, again, doing data analytics. Okay, so there's a theme here, and this is what the resume needs to do. This resume, if cleaned up, okay, and we're going to do it right now. If this resume is cleaned up, which it should be, you remove this, you remove, and I'm just going to show you what happens and why it becomes a good resume. You remove this. I don't like this district court stuff. I'm sorry. You remove this. You remove this. Well, you still have experience. You just have to remove. Well, I guess I can't do it. Here we go. Maybe this. Okay. You remove this, and then you call this something else. Intern, right? Intern, maybe because you did it. And you just say, is that intern? Or did I just do it? Give me a second. Yeah, you just take that out. Then you talk about, well, you have to take it out. Sorry, give me 1 second. This report, take that out. Yeah, this is a job. You call yourself an intern. That's it. Here you call yourself a research associate. That's it. They don't even know what it's about. You say you were in the Legal Aid Society for 3 months as an intern. Again, this is taking people in a completely different direction, but maybe you leave that on there, but you just say intern, right? Intern, maybe you're doing tax related work. This is good. You say you were quantitative analytics. I like that. Again, you don't need all this information because you're starting to see a pattern here. You've got data analytics again. You're seeing a pattern. You've got data analytics research team. That's a pattern. You've got, now you talk about these certifications. So let me just show you everybody kind of what's happened to this resume. Sorry, Mike, however these were formatted, it's just not working. But you see this, you just start off, talk about technology. You talk about tax, that's fine. You talk about quantitative analytics. You talk about data analytics, talk about data analytics again. So this is a person, if this resume is cleaned up, that's a very interesting resume for someone that wants to do anything to do with data breaches and data protection and things for law firms. And because this is so focused, this person could be applying to law firms all over the country, and they look like a data analytics person. They don't look like a litigator anymore. They don't look like a corporate attorney anymore. They look like someone that wants to do data analytics. And that's pretty cool. There's not a lot of people like that. There's not a lot of people that have taken the time to try to get jobs and become an expert in that. And then you downplay all these other jobs. You senior quantitative analytics. Maybe you call yourself something else, worked on if there's any type of analytics, and then you don't have all this information about experience. It's unrelated to some sort of focus. Now let's get in here. Foundations of Legal Research Certification. No one cares about that. I'm sorry, not if you want to be data analytics. No one cares about this gold leadership certificate. Maybe Ohio State's got a great place for it, but that has nothing to do with what you want to do. No one cares about a writing certification, but they are going to care about this data science profession because it's all related to data science and all the stuff you've done. That's perfectly fine. Now, you want to put these things on here, your activities and interests. That's fine. I guess it looks, makes you look good, but great. I'm going to say a couple things in this presentation that are going to piss people off, but I just have to do it because it's what it is. Silk flowers and diversity initiatives. You do not want to look like someone who is going to go to a law firm and be mad because there's not enough diversity. I mean, it's just this whole stuff is really backfiring. It was great, but the whole world has changed in the US where law firms are getting rid of all this DEI stuff, so are companies. And people that were doing that are losing their jobs. Now, I'm not here to comment on whether I've written a book about diversity, promoting diversity. I mean, I'm the only person in the world that's probably written a book. That's written a book that talks about diversity in law firms. But this is, something that I don't know that benefits you. If you want to put that on there and appeal to a firm that's very interested in diversity and wants to hire people interested in diversity, you can do that. But there's going to be some that aren't. So I don't know why you would, again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong, but if you put yourself in that position, then you could, you have the potential of alienating some firms. And this is not my decision. But, I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal yesterday that, schools like, I think, I don't know which one it was, Brown or something, or Amherst went from, having, hiring or, having 15% of people in their class that were African American. Now it's like 3. I mean, because it's just this is something that's not going well for diversity. But again, you just have to be careful. I like the henna artist stuff and these different languages. It just makes you look well, and then the silk flowers is interesting and something people can talk about. But let's take this resume here. All of a sudden, it's one page, talks about technology, talks about tax. I think that's okay. But then it talks about quantitative analytics. It talks about data. It talks about data analytics research intern. It talks about getting a data science professional certificate. So I look at this resume now, and I'm like, this person really wants to do things related to technology and data, and it's perfect. And I think that, if you're watching this, this is what you're interested in. You're probably not interested in all these other things. And law firms need to look at your resume, and they need to see one thing. This person goes from, with their current resume or their old resume, they go from someone who would probably not get many jobs anywhere. And I'm not trying to be rude, but I'm just saying there's no consistency. I mean, now you have consistency. Do you want to take off, study abroad? You could just say, took classes internationally, not available at school at Ohio State, in legal protection, cyber crimes, comparative law. I mean, that's great. So it doesn't look like you're some like rich person traveling over. You just say you went out of your way to take all these classes. Suddenly, wow, technology, cyber, I don't regulating war, no, corporate law, no, cyber threats, took a class, international, took a class. Again, everything is focused, cyber, technology, everything is focused on data. I mean, look how good this is. Data analytics, computational analysis, cum laude. I mean, this is freaking awesome. I love this resume now. And you should too. I mean, it's just very, very good. It's all related to data analytics, got a little bit of tax and housing. Then you have all the stuff related to data analytics. Suddenly the resume is one page, which it should be. I don't know how to get this all into one page, but suddenly this resume is one page and it's very, very good. And this person has set themselves up from going to getting any job they possibly could to getting a job doing one thing. And I want everybody to look at this. I mean, I really want to show you what you can do to your resume if you have a focus. And by the way, taking these, working for this professor or whatever you did, doing something else, you don't put in what it was or who he or she was. You should have sought out a professor that did something to do with data science. That's what someone with that type of work would do. But this resume has gone from horrible to excellent. And doesn't matter where the person went to school, it matters the focus. And if I saw this and I was a mid-sized law firm and we had clients that needed data related things, then I would hire this person. And this person suddenly is a very good attorney. Now, I don't know that, if they're in Columbus, that there's going to be firms that want to do that. But I guarantee you, if this person does a very aggressive search and looks at a lot of places and gets their resume out there, that they're going to get a job. And it doesn't matter where they went to school. It doesn't matter how they did in school particularly. It matters that they have a focus. And if you continue your career with this focus, great things will happen. I promise you. I had a candidate not too long ago that did something similar to this. He started his career at a firm that he didn't like, but he kept reading about this. He kept writing papers. He would develop his own special files about it. And he sought out, he went to associations and met attorneys and did all this stuff to be very, very focused. At that time, I think it was data privacy, similar, very, very focused on that. And he went from, someone that had a tremendous amount of problems early in his career, failing the bar, not having a job when he got out of law school, to working in, a top US law firm with lots of business because clients would like this. Suddenly you have a very good resume. Before it was nothing. And this is what anybody on this call can do with their resumes. Anybody can make their resumes very good if you have this focus. This resume is exceptional now because it focuses on that. And this person, people that hire them will know what they want to do. There's no doubt. So, I mean, very, very, helpful changes. Okay, so this person is in-house counsel, so I'm not going to look at that. I will look at some in-house counsels later, but let's look at this particular person, what they're doing. Oh, this is their school at the end of their resume. Here, let's find some more resumes. Okay, so this person of counsel in employment law, they moved from a job in-house. They're now in a law firm. Then they worked in civil rights. Then they worked in public law. Then they worked in a public law practice group. Then they were a summer associate in a law firm, in two law firms. And then they went to the University of Virginia Law School and were in the top 15% of their class, which is excellent. And then they went to Yale University. Look at that. So that's pretty awesome. This person obviously is extremely intelligent and has a lot of potential, even though they're 20, 18 years out of law school. So let's talk about what we can do with this resume. So there's a big theme here with this attorney, public law, let's see here, educational civil rights, DEI and social governance for several years, and now they're doing employment. So this resume has some of the same issues as the one we saw before. The resume that we saw before was focused on data science and things related to that and became an excellent resume. And now we have this resume, which is also 2 pages from a very accomplished attorney. Now, I want everyone to see some of the patterns here that are kind of interesting to think about because of all the different jobs this person has had. They were an associate it looks like in a large law firm for many years, for 5 years. I'm just assuming this is a large law firm. They, for whatever reason, they graduated in May, and they started at this firm 2006. Now, I look at this resume, and again, as someone who's been doing this for 25 years, I'm looking at it and I'm actually a little bit confused. And I'm confused because I don't really understand what's going on here. I understand that the person worked in a law firm for 5 years and then went to work for the government. I understand that they did civil rights. And then I understand here that they did diversity and inclusion for a company, I guess, also in the Washington, D.C. area. And then I understand here that they did employment law for just a few months. So what do I do? I mean, what do I do with this resume? Like, who do I send it to? Who could I, how would I modify this resume to get this person the job? Like what would be how would I do it? And then of course, why was this person only at their last job for 7 months? Like what happened? Like, how did this person move? Why did they move from a company back to a law firm? So I want to talk about a few other things here. So that are kind of important. So, and this is again, like, what is your focus? Okay. I just hate this when this happens. What is your focus? What do you want to do? Where do you want to do it? Do it. Do you want to be in a law firm, government, in-house? I mean, what is it that this person wants? I mean, I look at this and first of all, my question is practice area. Like what is this person's practice area? What is it? Do they want to do public law, employment? What do they want to do? And, where do they want to do it? I mean, all these are big questions. Like, your resume needs to answer that. Like, how can I, work with someone and how can I place someone and how can someone get a job if they don't know if they don't have a focus, and if they don't know what they want to do? That's a problem, right? So, you need to look at your resume and say, because employers can look at this, you say, what is the person focused on? What is important to them? What do they want to do? Where do they want to do it? Do they want to be in a law firm? Do they want to be in government? Do they want to be in-house? And here, this resume raises a lot of questions because this person's worked in all these different practice settings, and yet it almost seems inconsistent. So, so I'm looking at this and, I'm wondering, like, why was this person, why didn't they last there longer? Like, what happened? What's going on here? And they're talking about all these things. Now, this is good. And I think that we're starting to see a pattern here. But this person, they have a lot of stuff in here about DEI. I'm going to come back to that in a second. So DEI is something that's very important to this person and that they're proud of. The problem is now, if you go online and you read articles in the Wall Street Journal and all these different papers, all of these companies that hired all these DEI people are now letting them go. They're also letting people go, and companies are all, getting out of what is this ESG stuff as well. ESG is something to do with environmental standards, I believe. But there's all this stuff with DEI programs, and and you got to ask yourself, like, is what I do, other thing when you say, this, you say, is what I do marketable? So, you want to be in a practice area, that is growing. And DEI, by the way, was growing before. It was a very hot practice area a couple of years ago. But you want to be in a practice area is growing and not shrinking, right? So you need to be and not shrinking. You need to be in a practice area where where you have some sort of way of getting a job. And unfortunately, it's DEI right now. There's other practice areas that also aren't growing. But this particular emphasis on this person's resume is going to hold them back from, getting a job. So let's talk about, how do we take this resume that's doing all these different things, that's 2 pages long? How do we take this resume and make it into something that, this is the environmental, social, and so forth. How do we take this resume and make it into something that's sellable? Like, how do we sell this resume? We have to think about that, because this person is doing, it looks like, a lot of things related to diversity, a lot of things to do with environmental, social governance. They really are interested in this, and that's okay. That's if that's what this person wants to do, then that's what they should do. And I'm not, again, I'm not by any stretch of the imagination not telling them that there's something wrong with this, but I'm wondering, how do I, as a recruiter, like, how do I sell that? How do I sell someone that is doing something that isn't necessarily marketable? So you go through all this stuff and you see the same thing here. You see that, and then you see all this stuff that this person did in that. So, these are right here. These are employment related cases. Like, this is all employment stuff. A lot of it. Let's go here. Employment. There's a lot of employment related stuff. So the first thing, what I would say for this person is, I would say, you need to knock all this down to something that's going to work. It's difficult in this particular point in history, which it was a different point in history a couple of years ago. A couple of years ago, this person would have been a rock star. There would have been an incredible number of opportunities for this person to do that. But unfortunately, like in this particular, point in time, if this person wants to get another job in law firm, something's going to need to change, and they're going to need to do something different on their resume. And a lot of people are in this situation. So what would I do? My changes to this resume, if this person wants to get a job in a law firm, which I believe, by the way, is possible. They make these changes. I'm going to tell you. I can tell anybody how to get a job in a law firm. To progressive nonprofit, means, this person, by the way, has a very strong passion in helping people and making sure that companies are responsible with their hiring, making sure that the companies and firms are responsible, not just for hiring people from different diversities and things like that, but also making sure that companies and stuff are environmental, are responsible. So the advice I'm going to give to this person today is related to getting a job in law firms, because that's what I do. And I'm going to show them what their resume needs to say to do it. But I'm at the same time, there's a lot to think about here, because, if you want to get a job in a law firm, law firms, by the way, law firms are not social justice places. They want attorneys. They want attorneys that will sit down, do work, and not make. What does that mean? So if your resume is littered with things related to social justice, diversity, civil rights, and things like that, well, if I was a law firm, I would very easily reach the conclusion that this person is going to come in and decide that our organization isn't being, diverse or making enough of that. Our organization is doing things wrong. Our clients are not doing things the way they should. And so that, and I'm not knowing how to say it, but, ego and goals will overshadow, the person being able to do the job. Attorneys work with clients that are good and bad. And it doesn't matter Unfortunately, your judgment, is still judgment of this is immaterial. Like, so, an attorney is just basically there to do what you're supposed to do. Now, this is a very important point because this is what burns a ton of people when they get into law firms. They get into law firms, and you're basically hired to be a machine. And I'm not trying to be rude here, but you are hired to come into a law firm as an associate or partner to be a machine, do work, and get as many hours as possible out. If you have political opinions or all that sort of stuff, that should no way overshadow what the law firm is looking for. So I'm talking to everyone on this call or webinar, basically to make the point to you that whatever you believe about whatever, that's not, if you want to work in a law firm, you need to tone that down because law firms are just looking for people that are expert. Like if you hired this first resume that we talked about, which was the person that had all of this, stuff related to data privacy and stuff, that doesn't, all that makes no political statements. It's just about one thing. It makes people uncomfortable when you have very strong political motivations in a law firm. If you have those political motivations, you belong, social justice and things, you belong in a public interest organization, maybe the government, and not necessarily in a law firm. So, I do not think this by any stretch of imagination is a law firm resume. But how would I fix it? I would take out all this right here. And I'm just saying this person was of counsel and employment law in a law firm. I would basically take out DIE and social governance. That's not going to go anywhere. I would make this related more to, senior counsel of the firm, worked on environmental matters, or worked on employment matters for 3 years. There we go. All this is gone. And I'm just showing you how to get a job in a law firm. I'm not saying, anything about that. I would take this out. And again, I'm taking stuff out that I shouldn't, that's has nothing to do with, what this person is interested in. I'm just showing you how to get a job in a law firm. And you would talk about, worked on employment related, I would just say worked on employment related matters and hiring and other matters, except, it's really all you want to say, because you want to give people the sense. And again, I'm telling you how to get a job in a law firm. I'm not in any stretch of the imagination making any judgments about what you want to be and who you are. But I would take all this out, let's get out of there. And then what is this person doing here? Firms, ESG and government. I should take this out. Again, this does not by any stretch of the imagination encompass your interest or what you're doing. I'm showing how to get a job in a law firm. And then this and education and employment related law. And I'm showing everybody how to get a job in a law firm. Again, I'm sure what I'm doing here is just crushing this person and their interest, but I have to do it. Okay, that's it. So you go through and you make everything about employment law. And because that's what your last job is. And suddenly you look like, someone that, is an employment lawyer. Now you can add a couple more employment law things here, but the problem with this resume, I hope everybody can see the problem and understand it, is the problem is this person, is very interested in something that's very substantive. There's nothing wrong with that interest. I'm just telling people, everyone in this call, how do you get a job? And you get a job by looking like you're doing one thing. That's it. You have to look committed to one thing. People are not, it's very prestigious, probably working as associate general counsel where this person is. I'm sure the Department of Civil Rights is it's a major job. You spent 8 years of your life there, but but you don't, if you want to get hired as an attorney in a law firm, it's going to need to be focused on that. And then let's see here, like education, hiring, focused on best practices. Employment law, right? So, employment law. You talk about, you have some stuff about that, labor law practice. So this particular, what we've done to this resume, suddenly becomes this person's an employment lawyer. And again, all this stuff needs to fit on one page. So we're able now to fit all this on one page. We talk about employment law, and then you start getting into the and you talk about the Summer Associate. I'm sure there was a great firm in Houston. I'm sure there's a great firm there. All these are great jobs. We talk about employment law. You talk about having done it with big companies, you remove firms, you talk about, you don't give a lot of detail about stuff that are going to, to derail people. So if I saw this resume like this, I would think this is interesting. Maybe there's some firms looking for senior employment related people. There's nothing about this person's politics or anything on here. Suddenly it's all about employment law. And it looks like now They've been doing, employment laws now since 2011. We'll get in here. And then this, maybe public law practice group for the 5 years. Maybe you put, maybe you just take this out. You don't need to say public law practice group. Maybe you just say, worked on employment law, worked on a variety of employment related matters. And now, same thing, summer associate. So again, you look at this resume now, and instead of getting like bogged down and all this stuff that is very significant that you worked on, but instead of getting bogged down in all this, you suddenly look like an employment lawyer. And you are an employment lawyer. I mean, you've done a lot of, stuff, but when people go in house, they do all sorts of things, but you want to focus on employment law, employment. And this will get the person hired, that you will get a job if you do your resume this way and you apply to enough law firms, and you have a reason for wanting to go to work in law firms. So the reason, why, and people are also going to ask, why law firms, and then you'll have to basically say, I wanted to go back to a law firm because, I want to, I don't know, whatever your reasons are, you have to convince employers that you want to be in a law firm. And this resume has gone from something that never would have gotten any, unless this person networked or something, it would be extremely difficult for them to get into a position because no one is going to want to hire, or a law firm, someone whose whole resume is about ESG, DEI, progressive, all this stuff. This is what you need to do. And this will get you a job in a law firm. Now let's just go back to your education. So this person was doing white collar and labor and employment. So I would just say labor and employment practice group. You don't need to, no one's going to go back and check that you did white collar defense. You just talk about labor and employment. That's it. You just go there, talk about labor and employment, that's it. So everything's about labor and employment. You just do labor and employment. And, people don't need a lot of detail about what you did. Like, you do not need, every attorney works on a variety of things and people know it. If you were at a company for 3 years doing employment, people are going to know that you worked on tons of employment matters. People are going to know that you worked on a ton of employment matters for the civil rights. People are going to know, that in the 5 years you're at this firm, you did a lot of employment stuff. So suddenly you're just an employment lawyer. That's great. I mean, think about this. Do you want to not get a job, or do you want to be focused? And everybody needs to be very, very focused in terms of what they do to get a job. It's very, very simple. You don't need to go into a lot of detail about other things. Now, this person, I actually was on the Journal of Law and Politics. I was the managing editor. So thank you. I mean, this is fun talking to someone. I certainly did it many years before you did. And I think that, I think Scalia actually is the one that founded that journal. At least that's what I was told when I was there. So what do I do? What do we do with this particular resume? I would just say Journal of Law and Politics. If you want to leave that on there, you could. I wouldn't leave it on my resume. All this stuff comes off. No one cares. No one probably cares that you were an executive editor editing articles for the Journal of Politics. I remember where it was too, was actually they redid the law school, but when I was there, I mean, they rebuilt it. It was in the basement. But I would, do that, and probably even this. Why draw attention to something just being an editor instead of this incredible grade point and performance you had in law school? This stuff, maybe, no one cares. Qualifications, no one cares. You were, everybody that worked there, that. Okay, you can put that in there too. If you want to put your volunteer activities, that's fine. But remember, we're getting into something a little bit different here. Like, law firms just want people to do the work. They're not necessarily interested in public interest and that sort of thing. Again, I'm just telling you this so you can get a job. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it. Personally, I probably would remove this, but it's up to you. Want to do that. So this is how you take an average resume that's going to go nowhere to one that's very good. You just make sure that you're focused on one thing. That's it. So employment law, employment law, employment law, employment law. And suddenly this resume, there's some issues with how these are put on BCG stationery or something. So they're not editing very well. But the idea here just is you make everything focused on one thing. Both of these resumes have been cleaned up. Both of them are exceptional now. And this is all you need to do. And this is what I do when people hire me to review the resume. We go through that. But this person will get noticed by law firms. If there are openings for senior attorneys doing employment law, which there always are, all around DC, Virginia, then you have a very good shot of getting that. You can say, I have this government experience. I also have all this other experience. You get all that stuff about all the stuff that's important to you. If you want to get a job in a law firm, about ESG and everything off your resume. Now, there may be companies and government offices that want that, then maybe keep your resume the same. But you make it one page. It's all very good employers, worked in a good law firm, was a summer associate in a good law, two good law firms, and great education, nothing about, ESG or anything on there, and probably take this off. Suddenly, awesome resume. You've got a great resume. You went to Yale, you went to Virginia, you worked on all these great places, but you're making the dissent about one thing. So one thing, people look at your resume and they think employment law. Then they think, employment law. They think employment, employment, everything about employment. Like that's what they want when they hire an employment attorney. They don't want someone that's got all these other interests and is doing all these different things. They want someone that says employment. Now, how many times do you put your practice group and your focus on the resume? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Here's another one. 7. So 7 times you're mentioning what you do. And that's great. So that's what every resume should do. Now, I want to give a little bit more information to people about, is it important to list all of your experience, everything you've done, all the matters you've worked on your resume? And the answer is absolutely not. People know what it means to work for the government and do labor-related work. People know what it means to work as general counsel of a company and focus on employment. People knows what it means to work in a big law firm doing employment. You don't not need to talk about it in a lot of detail. Just listing a little bit on your resume and what you've done is perfect. I will tell you that some of the best resumes I've ever seen that got the most interest. I remember one early in my career, the guy had gone to Princeton, he'd gone to Harvard Law School, but he'd worked in one firm. He was a corporate associate there, and his resume was basically like 3/4 of a page. All it said was Harvard Law School, great grades or whatever. It said college, great grades. And then it said worked at this law firm, and he was a corporate associate. And he did M&A. So he said corporatist, worked on M&A. That was it. The guy got the most interviews of anybody I'd ever seen to that point. And you can too. Like, you just need to make your resume focused on one thing. Employers hire specialists. They do not hire jacks of all trades. Employers hire people that don't bring their personal motivations, whether it's diversity inclusion or public interest or all these outside things. They do not hire for that. They are not impressed, because that makes it seem like your interest and your passion lies elsewhere. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with this person having these passions. I'm just saying this is what you need to do if you want to get a job. I mean, that's it. So if I saw this resume now, I would be interested. I would grab the resume. I would search all the firms that have employment work in Washington, D.C., and Northern Virginia, and I would work very hard to get this person an interview. That's it. So, want to be in a law firm. They've tried all these other things, and they have reasons for it. So that's how you'd fix that one. Okay, let's look at some more resumes. The hell's going on here? Okay, wow. Okay, all right. This is a good resume to look at and very common. Now, I don't want to say anything mean, but yeah. Okay, so let's talk about how we can fix this resume up. Here we go. Bring that up. Okay, the person was admitted in January 2021. I want to make sure this person is actually, okay, so they graduated in 2020 from law school. Okay, so this person graduated. And this, by the way, I'm looking at this resume, and this is certainly not, person didn't go to top law school, it's unaccredited law school, but they still, it's meaningless. They still can get a job. But I want to talk about some of the things that we can do to fix this resume up. Okay, so if you graduated from law school in 2020, why would you put 2021 as your, I guess maybe that's when people get admitted. Okay, that's okay. But obviously, if you're working in California, people know that you're, as an attorney, they know that you're admitted to the bar. So you don't need to tell people about that. That's not something you need to do. You don't need a professional summary. I don't really understand the point of that. You don't need to put that at the top of your resume. Now you can put this stuff maybe at the end. Let's go there. Oh my God. All right. Well, this is a lot of work, but we're gonna do it. So I just wanna let's see how we do that. Okay. So this person is an immigration attorney. Great. So this is a good practice area. This person, believe it or not, is marketable. So, they can get a job, but let's see what they've done here. Okay. So the person is doing, lots of immigration related law. So when you say things like proven success handling large caseloads, no one cares. You have filed all these petitions. I'm going to leave this here because these are actually for this particular practice area. Having these skills is actually interesting. The reason I'm leaving it is because, there's just different types of immigration attorneys, but, they do different things. But I would just say, I would try to shorten it. I would just say, I'm actually, going to leave some of this, but, if you're applying for an immigration attorney job, you don't need to tell people what these different types of immigration are. Like you don't need to, the person that's reading it knows what these numbers and things mean. So you don't need to leave all that, I would just say this, like you've done these different types of, things related to immigration. So you just leave the types of things. So this, what I'm saying here is this person's, a immigration attorney. So you can leave some of this stuff. Okay. So paralegal, same thing. I would just say, senior immigration paralegal. That's it. So, and then you take all this stuff out. No one cares. You take this out. No, certified law student, whatever this title is, it's fine. Take it out. Immigration paralegal, that's all you need. No one cares. Internship, no one cares. Okay, you're applying to be a immigration attorney. So no one cares, especially if you're doing all this stuff in another country. So let's talk about when people list their professional background before going to law school. It's not really relevant, but it was relevant in the case of the resume we looked at where the person was doing things related to cybersecurity or whatever. But in this case, none of this is relevant. No one needs to know that you got a paralegal certificate. That's just people are looking for attorneys, not paralegals. No one cares about all of this stuff. If you got a master's degree, that's fine. No one cares about that. No one cares about a certificate you got. No one cares about, your, this. I mean, it's fine. Dean's list. No one cares about that. No one cares about all these awards. No one cares. Everything needs to be taught. This resume, by the way, it's freaking get a job, but not now. But it's this. I don't know what the Lambda Epson inductee thing is. No one cares about that. No one cares, by the way, if you know how to use Lexis, Westlaw, Microsoft Word, Google, or Zoom.
I'm having trouble hearing. Can you say that again?
Hello? Oh, sorry. No. Sorry.
That's okay.
That was my Alexa for some reason. No one cares about this. No one. I mean, why would
Sorry, there is nothing for me to resume.
nothing? No one cares about that you know how to use Microsoft Word, which, my 12-year-old daughter knows. No one cares about any of this. This is not something that makes you look like a strong attorney. If you need to put that down, that's, to an attorney, that's almost saying like, you know how to read. Okay, so let's go see what this resume looks like after we fix it. So here, this stuff goes, here, all of this stuff goes, whatever your title was there, that's fine. All this stuff goes. And I hope everyone's seen the theme here of how do you fix a resume? No one cares about this. I mean, how long did you do that? No one cares about that. No one really cares about this either. I would almost be willing to offer this person, the advice because they've been working for 2 years, even to possibly take out all of this other stuff, but that's up to you. But here, why would you, and this is another thing too in the legal profession. So there definitely is age discrimination. Absolutely no doubt about it. Like people want to hire younger people that are hungrier because, if you're, in this person's case, they're probably 45. I don't know, say 45. No, this person is 52. So you don't want to emphasize your age. You need to, people like younger people. I'm not making any judgments about this one way or another. I'm not saying it's right, but you take out all this other stuff here and suddenly this resume gets much shorter. And again, I really apologize. This stuff is not formatting well, but this resume, all this stuff, like just no. I mean, I understand you may be proud of all this stuff, but no one cares. So here we go. Remove that, remove this. Now, SIP and SIP certification, you're an immigration attorney. Now you're talking about privacy law. No one cares. That's not good. I mean, you don't want to emphasize that. You take that off. You take all this off. Your dates. By the way, you don't say 2015 to 16. You give months. You don't talk about, let me make sure I didn't take off the wrong things here. Yeah. You don't talk about, when you talk about when you were working, you don't put major dates. I mean, you talk about, you say like here, person's talking about these dates, but they're not talking about, they're not, you don't need to You need to say the month. You can't just put a year. Okay, so an internship. I mean, I guess you could, no internship. Well, maybe you can put it. But so now this resume goes from just nothing to something. So before, this person was bragging about all these things that had nothing to do with what they are as an immigration attorney. So now you take out all this stuff. That's like saying when you're talking to people, like, when you say file the brief, and then the brief says, document needed to, win a case. I mean, it's just, you don't need all this stuff. So you take all this out, and I don't know, I need to spend much more time on this, but this resume went from something that I would look at and be like, what the hell's going on here? Like, it's just a complete mess, to something that is actually very good. An immigration law firm is going to look at this and be like, hell yeah, like this person wants to do one thing. And that's it. I mean, you put the date here. I mean, May 2020, whatever, but Amy, but you put, Jesus, what the hell's wrong? But yeah, you go through and you make sure that it's cleaned up, but now it's one page. It says person's done nothing but immigration, and they've got these degrees, and great. So one page. And think about it from the standpoint of an employer. Like what we saw in the beginning was a resume that was all over the place, that had all the stuff was irrelevant, that went in 15 different directions. And now this person is an immigration attorney, and they were a paralegal. They've always wanted to be a freaking immigration attorney. That's great. And they're not going out and getting SIP certification and all this other crap that was on there. This resume is marketable. This person goes now and they apply to immigration jobs. Now, some firms, like mid-sized firms and stuff, aren't going to like where you went to law school. I'm just going to be honest with you. This is a unaccredited law school, but doesn't matter. I mean, you are an immigration attorney, and you've always wanted to be an immigration attorney, and that's all you need. You don't need all of this different information unrelated. People don't care that you passed the bar. People don't care that you, what the hell is this? I forgot about this too. This resume now is excellent, and I haven't spent much time on it. I would, but it's, person's been doing immigration law for 3.5 years. The person's been doing nothing but immigration law. And I want everyone to see this, because this is a good resume. The person's always worked in a law firm. The person is doing one thing. They've always wanted to do one thing since 2016 when they graduated, and that's great. Wouldn't you hire someone like this if you're an immigration attorney compared to the resume we saw before? I would. If I had a small law firm and I needed an immigration attorney, and I saw this resume and I didn't get many other resumes, I would hire this person. You would too. So that's how you need to modify your resume. Every resume, by the way, needs to be focused on one thing. And it's the same thing. Like, imagine you were hiring someone to, and I try to give examples that are relevant. I'll tell you an example. So yesterday we were thinking maybe we're going to get some of our accounting done in the Philippines. And so we had a meeting with a company that held itself out as a accounting company. And all of a sudden we got on this call, and there were like 4 or 5 people in the Philippines, and they started saying that they did all sorts of business process outsourcing. They did accounting, they did data entry, they did 15 different things. And if we hired them, they were going to go out and find us some accountants. They weren't an accounting firm. They didn't have any expertise in accounting. They were just like doing everything. So we were just like, what the hell, and got off the call. It's the same thing with you. Like, if you want to hire someone to do work for you, if the person, I mean, I don't care where they are, or, but if you need someone to take care of your children, and they give you a resume that discusses 100 different things that they do, and maybe there's a couple entries on there about how they, like care of children, you're going to hire someone that's an expert. Anybody would. If you need a doctor, you're going to hire someone that's an expert in one thing. You're not going to hire someone doing 15 different things, and you want to see everything drilled down, everything focused on one thing. So everything, you want, the resume needs to shout out, and people need to get the sense. And these were all immigration related things. People need to get the sense that, and the resume needs to say, I want to do one thing, and I'm committed to doing one thing. I know what I want. I don't want to do something else. And, there are some major red flags here about on this resume before, because the resume was talking about all these other jobs a person had. The resume was talking about being and going and getting these different certifications. unrelated to, immigration. And now this person is an immigration attorney. And I hope everyone can see the power of this. And this is what you need to do with your resume. You need to look at it from the perspective of what do I need to do? So I'll just write this down. What do I need to do to look like an expert in one thing? That's it. What do I need to do? And if you're able to do that, then your resume is going to be much, much stronger. Okay, let's get to this other one here. This looks like a pretty good one. Okay, so this person is, I'm looking at it right here, an in-house attorney. Okay, I'm going to try to find another law firm resume before I do this one. You see here, this is not where resume can help. I mean, these are all good examples because people are in-house, but I want to see if there's some more law firms. And a lot of people, by the way, that send their resumes are people that often have issues getting positions. So let me just see here. And that's why they send their resumes. See, give me a second here. I was looking through some of these because a lot of them, really have major issues. Okay, let's check out this one. Let's see here. I like Knox College. My college counselor in high school went there, and he was always encouraging me to go there. And it's a great school. Okay, so here, let's look at this person. So they graduated in 2020. We're going to go through and fix all this, and looks like they did pretty well. Okay, well, we'll go through this one real quickly because it's not really a law firm attorney, but it's interesting to see. So everybody, on this call, you have decisions to make when you're in law school, what type of career path you take and how is that career path going to lead you to a goal or to success. And, this, by the way, is one of the, I don't know what the hell to do with this resume here. The career path you choose, your interest and, motivation need to be clear when you get out of law school and throughout your career. So, everything needs to point to something, and meaning one thing. So, a lot of the resumes that were sent that I have, that's one of the problems. It's a lack of a clear goal and, and knowing what you want to do and being hireable by a law firm because of that focus. And so, I think, one of the themes that I see going through a lot of these resumes is that people don't have that. Now, sometimes every single resume we've looked at today, we've been able to fix and give people that focus. But you have to step back and just look at it from the point of view of an employer. What would you want if you're an employer? Would you want someone that's doing a lot of different things or no focus, or would you want someone with a focus? And it's so sad because all of you, there's hundreds of people on this call and we're looking at these resumes, but all of you have a decision to make now or before you go to law school or during law school or when you get out. You have to make a decision of what am I going to be and where am I going to go? So these, I can review resumes all day, but I want to really give you some, career advice is what am I going to be? Where am I going to go? And what do I offer? So I see people it's, and I always come back to Yale Law School, but people that go to Yale Law School, they will be in law school and then there's different types of people from Yale Law School. There's people from Yale Law School that early on, like Bill Clinton and all sorts of maybe J.D. Vance, all these people that make these decisions that they're going to go somewhere and they have a goal and they're going to get to it. And people from Yale Law School that do that go on to great things. They become presidents, they become world leaders and all this stuff or whatever, famous authors or because they're so talented. But a lot of people that go to Yale Law School, they kind of get this whole vibe of public interest, I'm so smart, all these people hire me. And they kind of get in this career trajectory early in their career where they're just working in a variety of organizations like that. And then they decide they want to go into a law firm. The law firm's like, are you out of your mind? Because they've never focused on anything. So these questions, what am I going to be? Where am I going to go? What type of person would I need to be to get there? So most people on this call, most attorneys, they never make that decision. It doesn't matter what your practice area is. You could say, I'm going to be the best insurance defense attorney in the world. I'm going to be a partner in 5 years in a major firm that I joined and give it everything I got. Or I'm going to develop this huge book of business doing, entertainment law, or whatever it is. And what do I need to be to do those things? And so, everyone, I mean, I just want to give you some very, focused and serious career advice is, you need to make these decisions and they need to come through in your resume because, if you don't do that, you're just going to kind of get, whatever you can get. And, this person right here, the person that we looked at, the immigration attorney, I mean, person went to a unaccredited law school, is old. I mean, I'm sorry, but in your 20s or your 30s or your 40s and your 50s, but is marketable, and they can get a job. There's no question about it. If you focus them on immigration and they did all this stuff and they've been doing it even as a paralegal, they're freaking hireable. They'll get a job. But a lot of these people that we're going to talk about today are much, have better qualifications, are younger, are all these different things, but can't get a job. The person from University of Virginia Law School, which the top 10 great law school, that person with a fixed resume could get a job as an employment, but it wasn't. So you just need to, I mean, you can pay me $500 to do a 30-minute resume review and record it, but you don't need to do that. I mean, maybe you do, but you just need to look at, what are you going to be? Where am I going to go? What do I need to be? What do I offer people? All these sorts of questions. And you need to have these goals that you look at like every day. I mean, you need to like know these things because if you don't, like most people don't have goals. They just go to a job and they just do whatever. And maybe they're not passionate about it. Like you also need to be passionate about your subject matter. Like whatever you're doing, when you talk to successful people, like there's generally something that motivated them to go into something. I was at a presentation with this guy. It was a very small group of like 4 people and was part of this young president's organization. And they had this speaker come and no one showed up except 4 of us. And he was, his father had this like, catastrophic motorcycle injury where he lost both of his legs. And he got this crappy settlement from an insurance company of like $200,000 or something. And in reality, he should have gotten, millions for what happened. And so his son, very early in his career was like, this is horrible. Like, he doesn't have money to take care of himself. He got a bad settlement from an insurance company. Like, he just, his attorney didn't know any better. And so he just became very upset and motivated. He's like, I'm going to, figure out how people can get, the right amount of money they're supposed to pay in their injuries. And then he founded this like national firm where all of these personal injury attorneys share the settlements that they got, from different injuries. And so then you started to realize, well, if State Farm's involved and they have a similar injury, they would pay $3 million. And so the attorneys now have access to that type of information, or farmers might only pay, 800,000. So they just got all this information and motivated me, started this huge business that suddenly had like $1 billion valuation within 2 years. I mean, people that do these things are motivated by pain or by something that happened, something in their background that makes them choose a practice area, makes them do something, and they love what they're doing. You have to like your practice area. Like you can't just take a practice area and go into a practice area where there's no passion for it. It has to be something that moves you and you enjoy it, because people that enjoy the work they're doing, they'll work harder, they'll have more fun, they'll improve, like all these sorts of things. Okay, so let's look at this resume. Okay, so this person got incredible grades at this law school. They're talking about how they're admitted to the bar. Well, God, I hope so. If they're practicing as an attorney. So typically, not trying to be rude here, typically attorneys that go to lesser ranked law schools will talk about how they pass the bar. And every attorney that's working as an attorney, of course they pass the bar. So no one needs to know any of this stuff. I mean, it's, you don't need to tell people you pass the bar if you're an attorney. I mean, come on. Like everyone knows you passed the bar. People don't need to look that you practiced at a law firm for 6 years as an attorney in New York, and you don't need to tell them you passed the bar because you did. Okay, so I don't know what Outlaws is. I don't know what the Incarcerated Law Students Advocacy Association is. I don't know what the Second Look Project is, but this stuff is completely irrelevant to any frickin' practice area that you're in. The Phi Beta Kappa is great. I don't know that getting a prize in French writing is really relevant to working as an attorney. But now I'm going to maybe now that I see this person, because this person is a removal defense attorney, or was for a year in San Francisco doing immigration. Okay. Then they did eviction. Then they were legal extern, and then they did a legal seminar. Okay. So in terms of working in a law firm, this particular resume, person graduated in 2020. This person, there's 2 things going on here, which is which I'm concerned about. And I don't know at this point, then I can fix most resumes, but I'm up against the wall here, with this particular one. I don't know that I can get this person a position in a law firm. And that's what this is, sometimes you just come up against a wall. And I say I can get anybody a job, but here I'm not sure what to do. Now, this person hasn't been out of law school very long. They graduated in 2020. So what I would do, I would basically concentrate this experience, which is all about immigration. And then I would probably just do this staff attorney here. I would, this has nothing to do with being an immigration attorney. So I would just say staff attorney, just like that. And then I would say legal extern and just do that. And then I would program assistant. So I wouldn't say anything about that. So all we can do with this resume, and it may work, is we can make this person into a immigration attorney. That may be what they want to do. So we can make them into doing, this type of work, immigration, whatever this stuff is. But then we're going to have to really de-emphasize whatever the hell this was, this particular job. And then we're going to have to just de-emphasize this. And then, if they want to leave this, that's fine. But, I don't know that that's that relevant. So here, all you can do is you can take this and I wouldn't even put removal defense attorney. Well, maybe you could. I would take this and make it into one page and make this person remove all this stuff. And by the way, I admitted defeat, but I'm not sure I'm defeated with this particular one. This particular resume, I may not be defeated. But here you just basically say you went to this great school, you were Phi Beta Kappa, this person's extremely smart, great student, done very well. And now you just say you did immigration related work, and then you just talk about this other stuff. And I'm not even sure that, these are summer jobs. That's great. So this becomes a one-page resume. All it talks about is whatever this immigration stuff related is. You can find firms that do that. And then you say nothing about all the stuff you did with evictions and stuff. People need to get the sense right away that you're one type of attorney. So I know people don't like this. I know people don't like it when we remove things from their resume that seem like they're, important to them, but you just can't do that. I mean, you have to make your resume say one thing. So again, what you're learning today could change the course of your life. And this is, I commend everyone for, watching this because, this particular type of information is exactly, what you need, and this is, I don't think we need that. I mean, this has nothing to do with immigration. Yeah. But now all of a sudden you have a resume that talks about immigration. You can get an immigration job and whatever type of immigration you want to do. I don't know if this is different types of things, but this person now, look at this. I mean, here we go. So, great schools, working on immigration, a few other jobs, but, had a job doing immigration, and this will be sellable. I probably, if I was talking to this particular person and they, I would tell them to go in and talk about the type of immigration you do. But this particular edit we did to this resume would be life-changing because this person, instead of sending out resumes, which I bet, they're on this call because they did, would be able to get jobs. Now, I do have a little bit of a concern here. I'm just going to bring it up. They're in San Francisco. The resume said nothing about having the California bar. So, that may be a problem, but, you could certainly go back to New York. But this resume now is a good resume. It's a great resume. And before it was crap. So, and again, if anybody wants to send me their resume, it's on this call and you really want to see it reviewed, it's Harrison at Barrister Consulting. And, I like doing these public presentations. I mean, I do, several of these a week where people pay me $500 to spend a half hour on their resume. But, for the people that are on this call, if I do get some resumes after the break, I'll look at some of them. Let's see what's going on with this person. Oh, maybe these were this additional one. I don't know what's going on with this resume. So let's see this particular one, life insurance. Here we go. I like this resume. Okay, so this person graduated from Wayne State, another great law school. I'm from Detroit. I know lots of my friends that I grew up that went there. Really good law school in Detroit. It's actually ranked pretty highly. I mean, I know a lot of people on this call may not have heard of it, but it's a very nice law school. It's kind of small. It's, there's a lot of good people there trying to get ahead. Okay, so then it's just a nice law school. Also went to Michigan, which is just awesome. I grew up in Michigan. It's obviously a very highly ranked school, great school. And now this person, it looks like they're an attorney, or they were, with a pretty good law firm in Detroit. So that's nice. Teaching assistant, and they were summer associate at a big firm. Probably in Detroit, but they didn't have anything to do with labor and employment. And then they were an audit staff attorney or insurance audit staff before they graduated from law school. Okay, so I like this resume. I'm actually excited to look at it, and it doesn't need a ton of work. So they're no longer a candidate. They graduated, and sometimes people will use their old resume when they were in law school and forget about it, that they were using the old one. So always, look at your resume and with a fresh set of eyes, look at it a couple times. I'm hoping that this isn't the resume this person has been sending to firms, because it's just that's a mistake. I also want to say to everyone on this call that usually I look at resumes and I see typos and things like that. But in this particular case, I'm seeing resumes that are pretty good, don't have typos, and pretty strong. So without that, so that's pretty good. So scholarships and things like I mean, I don't think you need these. Sometimes if you say, got 90% commit, tuition or something. So, this is what happens to a lot of attorneys. It's not always the best choice, but sometimes it is. Like this particular person may have gone to University of Michigan, got 165 in their LSATs or something, and could have gone to a better law school, but they went to Wayne State because they got a free ride. People do that a lot of times. This is my recommendation. I recommend going to the best law school you get into, regardless of the cost. But, this person may have gotten a scholarship, but it's irrelevant that, these different majors and things, it's not really, if you want people to get a sense of just one thing that you do, just say you've got a Bachelor of Arts. Now, sometimes people major in these kind of things that aren't, necessarily that marketable. Like they may study anthropology or something, and you don't need to talk about your major really if it's detracting. People don't care about your major really. They just care that you graduated from this amazing school. This particular thing, cultural experiences in a abroad program in France, same recommendation. This is the second resume we've seen where people are talking about how they were able to do these wonderful international travels. Again, this detracts from the message of the resume. We're going to redo this resume to make this person marketable. So this is not marketable. People do not care that you went overseas. If anything, they don't like it because, once you start practicing attorney, you definitely don't have 3 months to go abroad. You just don't. And you may be very proud of it, interested in it, but it completely detracts from the message of your resume. So this is just an example of putting more stuff on there that has nothing to do with what you do. Now, here we go. Labor and employment associate at a awesome firm and did all these different things. Now, these things, employee handbooks, discovery, research. I mean, this person's just basically doing litigation and all sorts of labor and employment work. No one cares. So all of these things, experiences you have, the problem with listing all these different things you have is you may think it's good, but you're also, if you are doing kind of things that any labor and employment attorney would do, which would be articles and research, then who cares? I mean, no one cares that you did that. And if anything, you're drawing attention to things you may not have done. So, I don't think it's a good idea. That's my opinion. Just take that off. Labor and employment associate. A teaching assistant. No, I mean, no, it doesn't. That doesn't take you anywhere. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, you may like it, but it has nothing to do with what your skill sets are and what you could do. Now, in this particular case, the labor and employment associate, you may want to list a few things, but same thing. You don't want to draw too much attention away from that. I would, summer associate, same thing. Now, if you did some employment work, but here's the problem with the summer associate work, you have just as much detail about being a summer associate as you had as being labor and employment associate. So I don't like that. I mean, why would you put more detail as a summer associate than you had doing that? So I would take that out. So now look at this. Wayne State, great law school. Michigan, great law school. This person's obviously committed to the Detroit area, worked in a big firm, probably in Detroit, was a summer associate in a big firm in Detroit. And now they're starting to talk about what audit staff and all these different things. You can take that out too, just audit staff. So this resume, I know, we've really cut it down to the bones, but, you may want to, there's a lot of stuff I've taken out of here, so. I would maybe a few labor and employment things, related employment things, if you can. And, maybe more, a little bit more detail, about what you, but not much. So I like this resume now. I think it needs more detail. I took too much out. But, if you're able to, highlight just things about that, then you're going to be in much better shape. So, this particular resume I took way too much out, but it's still, it's better than it was. So, there's not a lot of stuff that this person did. So you're going to need to make it a little bit longer. But really just, things down to the bones is going to be more effective. Again, this resume needs more detail, but I would flesh it out with more detail about your labor and employment experience, probably a lot of the stuff that I removed, and then, try to make it like that. You just want to look like you want to do one thing, and you want to leave the good stuff and not put too much stuff in that's going to confuse the reader. Okay, let's see what we got here. This next one, I'm going to take a couple of looks. Now, these in-house resumes are always very similar. So I know that there's probably a lot of, in-house people in here. But I just want you to show you some of the resumes we've done. Like this, we fixed. What else? Mistakes there. That was a big one. This person is in-house. I want to find someone that's worked in a law firm. This one we may come back to. I also have some other ones that people have sent. Let me just take a look real quick. Additional sort of law students. All right, well, I'm going to go through and just give a couple suggestions, for a law student. So this is just, if your grade point's not that awesome, you always take it off. So that's just a big rule. Being these activities like the running club and stuff, no one cares about. This is okay. You don't tell people, say leadership and honors and everything. That's, you let the reader reach those conclusions. So you never emphasize mediocrity. That's a big one. So a lot of people are doing that. They emphasize mediocrity, and then you never put things that are really, you don't tell people things like I was a leader or, with these honors. Housing and education, news producers. Okay, so there's not a lot of stuff that I can do with this particular resume because this person doesn't have a lot of experience. I would say, with your resume, you want to try to break this particular one down to at least have some focus on something. So it needs to, you need to look like you know where you want to go. This particular person, I think, what I would say is this person, you don't say filled in of weekends and stuff. This person looks like they like writing and litigation and probably are a good writer. So I like that. I think that with a lot of things on this resume, it makes that point. I mean, I'll just tell you like some of the things that point towards liking writing. Let's see here, all this stuff, writing, I'm just telling everyone like how to, to make a resume that looks, no one cares that you were part of a sorority. And that's all writing. This is all writing, it's all writing, writing, so I would say just, this is just an example of someone like you say, well, what should you be doing? Like, what should you be doing with your career, based on what you've had interest in before. And, I would, cut this down just to things that show writing, and law firms need writers because that's what they do. This resume looks kind of well positioned to be a writer. So something like that. But, saying you took phone calls, I mean, come on, like, no one needs to know about that. But, you emphasize things that are focused and make you look strong. So, use this stuff like there. It's not going to help you too much. Okay. So a lot of foreign attorneys try to get jobs in the United States. I guess I'll, maybe take a little bit of time on this. I know it's not going to help you that aren't U.S. attorneys, but there are so many people in the U.S. that want to get jobs as foreign attorneys. So let's talk about a little bit about that. Okay, so this person got a master of law, got a master of laws. Fine, you can talk about that. You don't need to talk about the courses you took. No one cares about that. Just say you got a master of laws. That's it. And I don't know if that GPA is good or not, but you just say master of laws. The problem with saying it's international business and economic law is that people, if you're doing that, then you're going to look like a corporate attorney, which actually this person wants to do. So I'm going to leave that in. That's good. So the person looks like they want to be a corporate attorney. Okay, then these foreign schools, I would move this qualifying certificate. No one cares about that. The fact that you went to law school in Ghana is fine. So you put that there, you can put that there. Then legal counsel in Ghana till 2023. Okay. That's fine. That's corporate. Office of the Attorney General in Ghana. You can remove all this stuff that has nothing to do with corporate because it looks like you want to be a corporate attorney. So we'll remove that. And then this is all corporate related. This is not corporate related. So I don't know that that's necessary, so I would remove that. Then this is a job doing employment, that has nothing to do with corporate, remove that. Division of Corporate Defender Services, that has nothing to do with being a corporate attorney, I would remove that. None of this has anything to do with being a corporate attorney, I would remove that. And then all this stuff about, legally authorized, Jesus. Which is actually, this stuff is okay, so I'm not actually against it. So give me one second, put down here. And by the way, this is amazing, like, I'm glad people are interested in this because, out of the close to 1,000 people that started on this call, I mean, over 900 are still here. This is a long call going over this stuff, so it's impressive that people are taking the time to learn about this stuff. It's very important and can help you. So authorization to legally authorize to work in the United States without employer sponsorship. That's a very important thing for attorneys that are from foreign countries. So being able to say that is awesome. So people will like that. And then the results from the New York State Bar Association. So I would just, if I was this person, what I would do is I would try to look like a corporate attorney as much as I could. So I would, anything that's not related to corporate, these study abroads and all that stuff, not related, you take all that out and suddenly, people can see this person as being a corporate attorney. That's how I would approach it. The problem is all these jobs and things are in Ghana and, I don't even know where that is. I know it's in Africa, but no offense, but I'm sure it's a great place. I just, it's kind of exotic. So this is how this person probably should be working on applying to firms. One other piece of advice I want to give, and this is very important. And a lot of people, if you haven't been on my webinars before, I always try to give these examples to people because it's very important. If you're an international attorney or whoever you are. And by the way, I know there's a lot of questions and we will get to them after we review the formal resume. But, how do I get a job? To get a job, how do I get a job? So, what do you do to get a job if you're, one second, how do I get a job? If you're a foreign attorney trying to work in the US, like, how do I get a job? So let me tell you what most people do, and you may be doing the same thing if you're an attorney. So people think, yes, I'm in Washington, DC, I can get a job in New York. And, so what someone like this will do, and it's, I don't like the idea of L for most attorneys because it makes it very, very difficult. People come over and, I don't know how rich your family is, but, they spend $70,000 going to law school and then they think they're going to get a job in the US. Now, this person can get a job in the US. Whoever you are, whatever state you're in, you can get a job in the US. I mean, and this is for all attorneys that are on this call, because after we fix your resumes, you can get a job, but you have to know how to apply for a job. And so what this person will probably do, what every person in the situation does, is they will pick up and spend more money moving to New York City and trying to get a job there. So what happens in big markets, major markets like New York? Everyone goes there. So I mean, just think about that. Everyone goes to big markets, thinks they're going to make it. And the problem with that, idea is that, you probably won't unless you have great qualifications. The reason is because, and this advice, by the way, could change the life of this person from Ghana. The problem with major markets like New York is there are far, far, far many attorneys than there are jobs. So, firms will hire the best people. And, there are lots of best people. So let me tell you a quick story. I was, 4 or 5 years ago, there was a guy, he went to Harvard Law School and then he got a job, not a great firm, like a mid-sized firm in New York City. And then he got laid off. And by the time he came to me, he'd applied to 500 firms and in New York City and hadn't gotten a job. Well, New York is a very competitive market. So unless you're currently employed, if you're not employed, it sends all these red flags, which I'm not going to get into, that maybe you weren't good enough for the firm you're in, and they would prefer to hire someone that is employed with a big firm as opposed to someone who's not employed in a law firm, because there's so many people that are employed that they don't have to question, why they're not working, that they'll always hire the people that are employed. It's just the market's too big. So this person is, if they moved to New York City with this dream and their family pays all this money for them to rent an apartment, try to get a job, is probably gonna be very disappointed. And they're gonna think, oh, there's something wrong, the market's too complex, too busy. But the reality is that anybody can get a job. Anybody on this call that's an attorney can get a job. It's just, it's not hard. But what you do is you don't apply to all the firms in New York. And again, this will change this person's life and their career. It will change your life and your career if you're going to listen to what I'm talking about you right now, which is something that almost no one does. And because they don't do it, they don't get jobs. And just over and over and over again, I see the same thing repeating itself. So go to New York City and try to get a job. Probably not a good use of your time because it's going to be very difficult. But what do you do? What do you do if you don't think you can get a job? What do you do if you have a law degree and you've been applying to all these places and maybe you pay me to fix up your resume or come to something like that? But what do you do to get a job if you're not getting a job? Because if you are competing in big markets and you're not like a perfect candidate, you're not going to be able to get a job. I mean, it's just, why would, if there's people that are better than you, everything is about the law of supply and demand. If there's people that are better than you, then those are the people that they will hire. So here's a list of cities in New York State. Let's just see. This is the list of cities in New York State. And look how many there are, pages and pages and pages of cities in New York State. Each one of these cities, by the way, has lots of attorneys. They do. They all have attorneys. Every single one of these hundreds of cities has attorneys and law firms in it. The problem is instead of like thinking about those places, everyone's thinking about New York City. They think, oh, I'll go to work in where's New York City, Hampstead, New York City. So everyone's thinking about working in this area where there's 8.9 million people and hoping that they can make it there. That's what they're thinking. They're thinking, I can go to this big market and get a job. Everything is about the law of supply and demand. So yes, there's a lot of demand for attorneys there, but there's enough attorneys that things are going to be very, very difficult for you if you're trying to get a job there. So let's look at some of these other cities, and I'll take one kind of randomly. I want to find Rochester, New York's a big market. It's 200,000 people. You have all these different cities. Now, Syracuse, New York, 148,000 people. I mean, just looking at all this, it's just, crazy. Like how many, firms are there? Spring Valley. I don't even know where Spring Valley is. I don't know what it is. I know what Syracuse is. I've heard of it. Utica, New York, I've never heard of. So let's take a look at Utica, New York. So Utica, New York, corporate law firms, corporate attorneys in Utica. So these are all the corporate attorneys in Utica, New York. So here's some rankings of corporate attorneys. Here's some other list of corporate attorneys. Here's some other lists of corporate attorneys. But this is what's interesting is when you start looking at Google, things get exciting. And I don't care what state you're in. If you're not getting a job, you have to listen very, very closely to what I'm saying if you want to get a job and if you want to support your family and if you want to continue with your legal career. So I click on this and I've got all of these corporate attorneys, 7 pages, it looks like, of corporate attorneys, people that do corporate related work in New York. And so, what do you do? Like, what do you make out of all this? So you go through these list of attorneys. Now, they're not all going to be corporate attorneys, but you look at, these lists and you see their practice areas. And this random firm that I just clicked on is in Utica, New York, and they do corporate work, right? So, and I guarantee you that this little firm, how many people are there? This little firm, these 3 people in H&A, J.K. Gage and Gabriel Hage, do not get unsolicited applications from people seeking to work there. They don't, but they're just sitting there. They're not getting applications. They probably would like someone to help them if the price was right, but they're not getting applications. So let's click on this guy. And all I would do as an attorney is I would just click on my email and I would send him an email. Here's his email saying, hey, I recently graduated from Georgetown. I have an interest in doing corporate law. I'd love to talk to you about potentially working for you. This guy sitting in Utica, New York, probably gets an email like that once every 5 years. No one's just sitting there. No one is contacting him. But someone contacts him, and he's going to think, hey, maybe I can bring this person in. Maybe I could use them for this. Maybe, I have all this extra work I'm not doing. And I'm just showing you one law firm in one city. Okay, so don't sit there like everyone sits there in their career like a deer in the headlights and they think that they can't get a job. I guarantee you, anyone. Doesn't matter what law school you went to, doesn't matter who you are. If you fix up your resume, you can get a job. I mean, it's that easy. So a good resume, wills and trust, asset, retirement, this is all trust in the States. But if you want to work, you can. So I just need to really make that point to everyone that everyone can get a job. It's insane to think you can. And because there's so many opportunities out there, it's just ridiculous. And there's so many places you can work, it's ridiculous. So, don't believe that, there's no opportunities for you, because there are. They're everywhere. They're all every state. I mean, when I showed you the list of cities in New York, I don't know, it's probably thousands. I mean, you don't go when you're selling something, you don't go after things that are obvious that everyone else is trying to do. You do things that other people aren't going to do, because you go into a market or find a person that's hungry for someone like you. That's it. You want to find people that are hungry. And if you don't find them, then you're not going to get employed. I'll tell you a quick story, and this is I learned this long ago. I had when I grew up, I used to have this asphalt business, and it was this business where I would take these sprayers and I would spray like asphalt sealer like all over parking lots and stuff, and destroy these trucks. So I only could use them like one season. By the end of the season, they were just basically, I mean, I guess you could keep them, but they were covered in tar and didn't have a long life expectancy. But anyway, so I had a couple of different ways of finding trucks. One, and this is before there were online ads and stuff, I could go into like the Detroit News or Free Press, and I could try to contact people about their trucks. Those people, because they were in those big papers, would always get a ton of calls. Like they would sell their trucks, they could sell them for a lot of money. They knew what they were worth. And then I could advertise in like Auto Trader or something along those lines. It was more of the same. Those people would get a lot of calls and, and sell their trucks for what they wanted. But then I found, like close by, there was a city next to Grosse Pointe, which is where I ran the business. And it was called Sinclair Shores. Not too far away, just like right next to Grosse Pointe. And they had a little magazine or a little newspaper that they put in, grocery stores and convenience stores where people could advertise for free their trucks and different things for sale. And it was basically in St. Clair Shores and maybe a city next to it, Mount Clemens. I have no idea, but it was a decent sized area, but these things were all advertised for free. And not only that, but no one knew about them. So every year I would look in Detroit Free Press and try to buy trucks, and they may be $3,000, and people wouldn't negotiate. The same thing with Auto Trader. But then I would pick up these these things that were in grocery stores and stuff, and I would call the people about their trucks for sale and stuff. And these people had gotten no calls. It was just this people, there wasn't it wasn't like they were advertising to all of Metro Detroit, which, millions of people. They were advertising these little cities where there wasn't a lot of people, looking for where there just wasn't a lot of people. So they weren't getting any calls. So I'd call them up. They would be like, wow, I finally got a call. They would think that whatever they had wasn't marketable because no one called. So I'd go out and I'd buy a truck that might cost me, I don't know, $2,500 in one of these big things, and I would get it for like 500 or 800 or 1,000 because they didn't know what they were worth, or so the point is that and so they were hungry to sell it. They thought this is my only opportunity. So my point is that you need to advertise yourself and market yourself where no one else is. It's as simple as that, and that's how you get jobs. And this person is going to be enormously disappointed if they go into New York City or whatever and try to get a job, which I'm sure they will. This is what happens. And they're going to think there's something wrong with them. Yet they could get a job if they were able to look at more markets. And if you want to change your life and you want to change your career, you have to learn how to market yourself, and you have to learn how to send yourself to places that are going to be interested in your service and what you're offering, instead of everywhere else. So again, look at all these markets. Syracuse is a good one. Spring Valley is a good one. There's going to be corporate attorneys in Spring Valley. There's going to be, so just get yourself Scarsdale. There's people in Scarsdale. There's people in Saratoga Springs. Like all these places that no one's thinking about are where you need to market yourself. I don't care who you are. This is what you need to do. And if you don't do that, you're not going to have the career you're capable of having. Okay, so get a couple more resumes. And these resume reviews, typically, I'm doing my best to help everyone here. And so these calls can, sometimes, go a little bit, they can go on for a little bit. Fix that one, look at a couple ones, then we'll take a break and then I'll see if anybody sent me more resumes. Duke University Law School. Let's see what this person's up to. Okay, all right, we'll get this one. Okay, so one of the first things is you don't tell people that you have a JD or an MBA at the top of your resume. If you do that at the top of your resume, that makes it look like, first of all, it makes it look like, that you're very proud of it, it's everything you've ever done, whatever. And I don't even know what a CCFI is, but you never put that at the top of your resume. You shorten things. You don't say work experience. Everyone knows that experience, you just say experience. In-house counsel. Okay, so this person is doing something related to blockchain and artificial intelligence, which is good. So that could be the focus there. Okay, this is blockchain. Great. So they're focused on that. Now, I'm a little concerned because this person only did this job for 6 months. So let's see what happens here. Okay, so this particular blockchain consulting. Okay, that's good. So I'm gonna just, again, I'm trying to get this person a job that they're, work, whatever, this blockchain related stuff. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this resume, but the idea would be for each of these jobs that this person has, they need to focus all this blockchain stuff. So, whatever this is here, I would talk about blockchain, which I don't even know what it is. Many people talk about it all the time, but blockchain. So this consulting, if that was a full-time job, no. What's going on here? Okay, so all this stuff needs to be token related. So I actually like this resume. I think it's quite interesting, with the consulting stuff. Let me see but this person's essentially doing 2 jobs. So this is consulting and they're doing that while they're working. So, typically we go at the end. Oh boy. And then the person had their own practice. Then they did all this different stuff. Yeah. So, this is a very difficult resume to work on. It's difficult because the person's doing so many different things. The whole idea, this is a very good, you take this out, no one cares. Don't need to put your languages on there. You don't need to put, well, this is very good, actually. This is very interesting. So this person is at a long-term interest in blockchain, which I like. And then, here you would put this consulting at the end. So this resume, by the way, needs a lot of work and it would probably take me, quite a while to go through it. But my suggestion to this person would be what you need to do is everything that you put on your resume should be related to blockchain. So this is interesting because the time this person had their own practice, which really only was 3 months, I'm not sure that you want to put that there because it's only 3 months, right? So why would you put something on your resume that was only 3 months when you were doing all of this other consulting during that same period of time? So so anything not related to blockchain should really, be put on there. Now, this resume is more wordy than it needs to be. So you don't think about things like adoption of acquiescence. That starts to sound like a resume of someone who's kind of academic and so forth. So I don't think any of that's necessary as well. So everything on this resume should be related, if possible, to blockchain. You can make it much shorter in one page. You could have all these different, instead of well, anyway, yeah. So you take everything off really. It has nothing to do with blockchain. You focus it on there, and then you have all this consulting, and suddenly this person has changed from looking like a kind of a jack of all trades to being a blockchain expert, which actually it becomes marketable. So especially to law firms that need that kind of service, when you start putting that you're an attorney doing estate planning and all this stuff, it really detracts from the overall message. This expert consulting that was done from December to 2020, I would try to work it probably in here and then somehow make everything seem more about blockchain. That's what I would do. And then if you focus everything on that, then what happens is you look like a blockchain expert instead of someone who's doing a bunch of different things that have nothing to do with that practice area. So focusing your resume on that and somehow, making people see nothing but that when they're looking at your resume, that makes you marketable to companies. It makes you marketable to law firms with those openings. And it shows a consistency of, working on all of the stuff that you're an expert in. We did remove your blockchain or whatever certification from the top, but you would put that down at the bottom. Look at all this stuff. I mean, this is great. I don't know if this is related, but all of these things, are very much related to what you do. So this would come off, all this stuff would stay on there. And then, these bar admissions, you could put you could put at the end, I guess. Bar judge of that. I mean, this is way too much, but all of this stuff would go at the end. And then you don't need to say email, cell phone, Proteum, Linktree. You would just say your email, you would just say your phone, and then you could put Linktree. All right. Okay, so this resume now is a lot better. Okay, so at this point, let me just see here. Excuse me, different screen. I think we can probably let me just make sure I'm the right things open here. Give me a second. Oops, sorry, give me 1 second. Yeah. So let's see here. At this point, I think we've made quite a bit of progress in a lot of these resumes. Let me just pull my additional one. Sorry, make sure additional resume for okay, I'm just pulling the market. And I'm very impressed, by the way, for everyone spending the time to watch this webinar, because I think you've probably learned more than you know watching this. I mean, just what we've covered today could change the course of your life. And I believe it, could, if you listen to all this. And this will be also recorded, and it's recorded, what we put up later. This is kind of an interesting resume. If this person is an attorney, say, no, not an attorney. All right, well, we'll go through and do a little work on this one just because I think it needs it. And then we'll take a break, and then we'll come back and we'll do questions. We'll summarize a lot of what we talked about. And then if anybody sent me interesting resumes during the call, which again, if you are dying to have your resume reviewed, I may take a look at it if you email me, Ferris Consulting, in the next few minutes. Okay, so this person, these summary things at the top of your resume need to go. The reason you don't put summaries at the top of your resume is because writing those makes the reader feel like, it just is like, you're not smart enough to understand what's in my resume, what my resume is about. So I need to summarize it for you at the top. Every law firm that looks at this can understand what you are. This is not good. So we've talked a little, let me just remove this. We've talked a lot about today about looking focused on something. I looked at this person's resume briefly just now, but having multiple practice areas that you're an expert in is not a good idea if you want to work in a law firm. But talking about wanting to work in multicultural environments is not good, because what if law firm, is not multicultural, and why are they going to be able to hire you? Multilingual settings. If you speak Mandarin, obviously you can do all these things, but all of this being passionate, I mean, that's kind of assumed if you're trying to get a job in a law firm. If someone's reading your resume, they already know that you have 10 years of experience based on, working on your resume. If you talk about resume working in the US and overseas, they already know that. All of this stuff needs to go. Here, you're just confusing the reader. You're saying, you're telling them I have 10 years, but I already know that. You're telling them you have experience in all these different practice areas, which are already in your resume. You're telling them you want to work in a multicultural environment, which they're going to be like, wait a minute, we're not multicultural. So you're turning them off. You're telling them you work in the US and over. Okay. Hello. I hope everyone can hear me. Okay, I think it seems like it's working now. Give me a second. If it's not working, my assistant Jared will call me. Okay, so let's get back to this. So regional attorney reporting to the senior and executive vice president, artist contracts, real estate development and mergers, acquisitions and joint venture. Okay, so this person wants to look like an entertainment attorney. So this kind of stuff, anything that has anything to do with not being entertainment, probably needs to go. So all this stuff is good. Live sports contracts, festival agreements, superstar international artists, brand protection for events, contracted with local vendors. So actually, what's interesting here is normally I would tell someone to remove all of this stuff. But, this is about touring. It's about entertainment. Like, this person actually has a pretty interesting specialty, sports, concerts. So normally you would remove all of these things from a resume. But here, this is actually all related to one thing. So this is very good. This is actually, normally I would tell someone, take all this crap out because they can figure it out. But here, a lot of people wouldn't know what this is about. And, so you take things off of the resume that are related to this particular thing. I'm actually liking this resume now. And, wow, turning agreements, international taxation. Well, okay, COVID-19 prevention measures. No, that's not necessary. Global corporate sponsor agreements. Okay, so this is very good. So normally when you look at a resume of someone that's trying to be an entertainment attorney, or it kind of goes all over the place. But here, this, is very interesting. Like it's an entertainment attorney and touring, Shanghai Mercedes-Benz Arena, all of this stuff is related to one thing. And this person did that for 6 years. This is an excellent resume. This person, because of the way they've explained what they did, people can figure this out. Now, I'm not saying there's a lot of places that this person can work, but if they want to work in a law firm that does this kind of work, then, they could do that. Now, I don't like regional attorney reporting to the CFO, including vendor agreements. I would take that out. I would just say, worked on, venue agreements, artist contracts. Now, I want to tell everybody that's on this call that a couple of things that are very good about this resume. This particular experience for the past 6 years puts this person in a very rare league of being able to show that they do one thing and they do one thing and they're very committed to it. And there's probably not a lot of people in the world that do this sort of work with touring artists and all this sort of stuff. So this is a very rare, specialized type of resume that this person, if they apply to, they can find law firms that do this kind of work, are going to be a very rare person that will get hired. So, take out all this stuff and you just make it, all about, you take out real estate, you take out, a lot of this other stuff, COVID-19, no one cares about that, and all this stuff. And suddenly this person is very focused, entertainment attorney with very rare skills. There's not gonna be a lot of places in the world that hire someone like this, but they could probably work in China. They could work all over, anywhere that they can, that this type of work is done. And I want everyone to see this example. It's actually a very good example. I was going to not review this resume because I thought I'd reviewed enough in-house resumes. But this is excellent. Look at all this stuff. It's about one thing. It's about, whatever, these touring, and I don't know if this is events, cross events. Very rare resume, very, very focused. Again, not a lot of people in the world do this kind of thing. Now, let's see what this person's doing next. Oh, for God's sake. When did they graduate from law school? 2015. Okay. So I'm assuming this was in whatever, law school. Fine. Intellectual property law clerk, all that out. Let's go back. Case and L supervisor. So that's what they did when they graduated in 2015. No, take this out. I would just say whatever, associate, whatever this role, whatever you can call this role, just say that. Corporate contracts attorney, take this out. But all this licensing stuff is relevant to what this person did as this. So this resume is great. No problem. I have no problems with it. This resume now, if you put this experience for the past 6 years, and I don't like corporate contracts attorney, you just say attorney, like, you just say attorney, and then you talk about this. So this IP infringement, all this stuff is related to what you do now. And so we have that. You don't have to say you're admitted in good standing. What the hell? I mean, no. I mean, no. I mean, just no. No. Just say Illinois bar. That's it. Honestly, other thing I would do, maybe, I'm just kind of throwing this out there, is I wouldn't even say anything about the bar because you're admitted, and obviously you're admitted when you took that, but you want to get into places if you're in Los Angeles and try to get into firms and you don't have the bar, get in there and first. But this is a great resume. This person is definitely employable. Lots of places inside of law firms. They're employable now inside of lots of companies that do it. And I just want to show everyone what the power of having a focused resume. Like all these resumes, and maybe we'll look at another one in a minute, but all these resumes are all over the map. In this particular resume is focused on one thing, and they've been doing it for 6 years. Everyone knows who this person is. Everyone knows what this person can do. Everyone knows that obviously this person has a lot of interpersonal skills and everything. This is a great resume now, but you can see the power of focusing. It's just so powerful once you can do that, and it turns into something. And you don't say professional skills. I mean, it's not. And I mean, I could say languages, maybe. I don't know, but yeah. Great resume now. And it was crap before, but now it's all focused on one thing. I would hire this person if I had a stadium or if I had something related to that. I would hire this person, but I wouldn't have before. Oh, good. Live event contracts. I mean, everything here just jumps out as doing one thing. And I like leaving it. I kind of like leaving it long like this just because it just focuses like this person. If there's a job anywhere in a law firm, in a company or something for someone like this person, they will get hired. And I hope everyone can see, like, I spend so much time in these resume calls because they're so important. because people mess up their resumes and don't get jobs. And here, all this person needs to talk about is the fact that they do one thing. And that makes the resume extremely powerful and something that works when it didn't before. This person too, now they're an immigration attorney and they were all this crap on their resume before that detracted from it. Also, I'll just kind of make one point here. I don't like all this bolding and so forth. I would take that off. I would probably use, when you talk about fonts and things, you want to make your resume look like everyone else's. You don't want to use weird fonts and things on your resume, because if you do, it's really going to detract from kind of the main message. Times New Roman, you put everything in the same font. You don't use all this bolding. It's just make it easy to read. And let's talk about some resumes that are very hard to read right now. Earlier, looking at an attorney, JD MBA. Again, this goes off. You don't, this is insane. Like, you don't put you were admitted on May 19, 2009. Now, people often do that if you're admitted in May, that means you probably failed the first bar. Come on, person graduated 2019, and they were admitted on May 14th. So yeah, no one needs this on your resume. I'm trying to give everyone's resume here a little bit of attention. This resume is actually very interesting, and I'll just kind of tell this person that's on the call what I like about it. I like that all this education goes at the end. I don't, when this person graduated 2019, I don't like all of this experience. I'm just spending a little time in this because I'm trying to see if this graduated in 2019. Okay, so all this stuff just comes out. So anyone that's putting non-legal related information prior to your graduation from law school, probably not the smartest thing, but all this stuff is related to kind of what you do, sort of, but yeah, not much students. No one cares you taught a class for 13 students. Internal auditor, that's probably okay. Staff auditor. So this person has a background in auditing, obviously, so that's fine. I don't mind that. Three things that are good about this resume. Oh, by the way, profile, it's crap. No one cares. So I'm spending a little bit of time on this resume just because I think it's interesting. I wasn't going to review it, but look at this: compliance. So that's it. So, I don't think you need all this detail. I'm sorry. But I think all this detail just kind of detracts from the main message here. And, you can put a little bit of detail, but, you're not going to you don't need a lot. There's not a lot of people like you out there. So you put a little bit of experience, you don't say professional experience, say experience. This goes at the end. It's okay to have certification that goes at the end. And then you start off the resume. And you basically have these jobs that you did. You don't want to give a lot of detail. Your auditor, that's great. And then maybe a little bit more detail about being the chief compliance officer. But you can see here that between 2017 and when this person graduated from law school, even, I guess, they were a compliance officer. So this is an in-house resume, but I just want to show everyone the value of just highlighting just one thing. Like, what do you do? You could talk a little bit about compliance and what you did, but no one needs to read all this detail about what you did. It's kind of assumed. And so, that's, this can be this is not a law firm, but if you were to talk about compliance, that would be helpful. I love fixing all this. Dean's Tutorial Society. And again, I'm just showing people, what to do with all this stuff on your resume. You take that out, and then there's memberships and things. No one needs that. Let's see if I can find one more. I love going through these and helping people. So I'm trying to help everyone on this call as much as I can submit the resume. Maybe I'll see some other ones. This one's kind of interesting. But Trademark Council. Okay, so let's look at and these are just different points that is important for you to understand when you're reading your resume. So people don't like it when your resumes and all these weird colors and stuff. The reason is that, and there's a lot of reasons, but it's people that put the colors on their resume and stuff typically are not the best resumes. So they may do a good job formatting, but then there's all sorts of other issues with a resume that make them difficult for people to get hired. And so, so this particular resume with this blue color and calling themselves a trademark counsel and stuff, you don't need to call yourself a trademark counsel, because anybody that's reading your resume will know what you are by your experience. You don't need to summarize your experience. Again, everyone that's doing this, it's not necessary. Actually, no one typically does that as a good attorney. I'm just going to be, trying to be rude here, but you don't ever have a professional, you don't even have, don't ever have something like that. It's not necessary. When you're writing what your experience is, you don't say work experience because everyone knows what work means. You just put experience, like that's all you need. And here we go. Trademark counsel for these trademark attorneys, 2019 to present. Look at all this experience. Now, I normally would, this is just awesome. Like, there's so much things related to trademark here. It's actually very exciting. There's all this trademark stuff. So if I needed a trademark attorney, I would be very interested in this person. And normally I would tell you to, telling people to shorten down the resumes, but this is a typo, which you should have caught, but you go ahead and you summarize this information. So like, one thing you can do too, and which is kind of fun, you can always go into like ChatGPT, and I'll just show people how to do this. And let me just hear chat.openai. When you might ask it to say, can you summarize experience to read for a resume? So I'm saying here in ChatGPT, I'm saying, can you summarize the experience, make it short and easy to read for a resume? I'm typing in what this person did, and ChatGPT is going to, make this much shorter instead of all this language that you had in there before. And just let me share my screen, make sure I share the right screen. No, I wasn't sharing the screen. Sorry. So this is what I did. I went into ChatGPT. I asked it to summarize the experience and make it shorter and easier to read for a resume. And so all these things that the person said, ChatGPT can come up kind of with best practices for you and summarize your resume a lot easier. And so everyone here, you can use ChatGPT to do that. And you can do it for, let me just see here. Oh boy. You can do it for, these are additional resumes. So give me 1 second. What am I doing here? Sorry, I've got a microphone blocking my screen. I'm trying to do this. Okay, so here, like what you have here, I just plugged it into ChatGPT to make it better. And there we go. So you have just this much shorter, resume that, the ChatGPT will summarize it for you. So I recommend everybody, this is, one of the things is, if you watch this, because you're still here, I would encourage everyone to do that. So this person worked from 2019 to current. So let me just see when they graduated from law school. Oh boy, I'm not sure I understand what's going on here and how this person is working in the United States. So I don't know how to really figure that out. I guess they are. Skills removed. No one cares that you know how to do critical thinking or multi-legal research. No one cares about that. Your resume obviously says you know how to do trademarks. Patent attorney's assistant. You do not need to put this job in your resume. That has nothing to do with working in the US. These publications are great and I think they're interesting. But unfortunately, I don't think these are, maybe they are, okay. You can put those in there. Yeah, but that's education. That's what I would do with this particular resume. Oh, here we go. Is this the right resume? No, it's a different resume. Anyway, trademark counsel, by the way, again, the education goes at the end of your resume if you have more than 5 years of experience. I don't know. I'm so excited about all these resumes. Let's see here. Total practitioner, agency, trial attorney. All right, I am not going to work on this resume right now. New York University. Okay, this person actually went to a good law school, so I'm going to work on this one now. All right, so and my activities, Black Law Students Association. I don't care what your association is. I don't care if it's Black Law Students Association, Constitutional Law Association. You remove it from your resume. You don't need to put associations, regardless of what they are, unless it's highly related to what you do. Like if you were a trademark attorney and you were a member of the Trademark Attorneys Association, that's okay, but not here. A BA in sociology with honors, with is lowercase, so you always need to proofread things. Golden Key, done Upsilon, activities, traveled to Nogales. Someone raised their hand. And if you did, you had a question about your resume, I'm not even sure really how to look at the hand. Let's see here. Okay, I don't know how to do that. But raise their hand. Let me just see. this person whose resume I'm reviewing may have raised their hand. 2 participants did. Let's 2 participants. Okay. People want to talk. Okay. Who's this person that raised their? All right. I would let this person raise their hand. Questions about the resume? Okay, the person can talk now if they want.
Hi, Harrison. We can't see your screen. Sorry.
Oh, you can? All right. Thanks for letting me know. All right, I'm still in ChatGPT. All right, sorry about that. Thank you. There we go. You can see it now. Okay. All right. Is that right? Can you see it?
Yes, we can see it now. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Okay, so this particular resume, what I did here is just let me go back then, since you may not have seen it. Some of the stuff I removed. Let me go to for it. Oh boy, let me just go here back. Okay, so let's get back to this resume of this person that went to NYU. Okay, so what I was saying about the the associations and things like that is I don't recommend anybody list any associations on their resume. Just because an association is just kind of something that you would do when you're in anybody can do it. I mean, you could do the Constitutional Law Association, you could do the, whatever, but I just don't recommend putting associations on your resume. Just it doesn't have any value and it doesn't really add a lot to what you're trying to do. Okay, so these activities are also interesting. I don't know that you need, these honors and things. I mean, you can certainly leave them. The activities you might want to leave. I'm going to go back when I take a look at this after a few minutes. Okay, so let's look at, so the person graduated in 2005 and their first job was probably at a big firm for a year and a half doing commercial litigation and different things. I'm going to think about that for a little bit before we do anything, but yeah, let me just think about that. Okay, then this person took some time off, not much, like 9 months, and went and worked as a volunteer attorney, then became a trial attorney, then became a solo practitioner for 5 years, and then became a general counsel in Omaha, Nebraska. Okay. So this is an interesting resume. The person went to a great law school. They were an associate at probably a very big firm in Cleveland, and they worked there for a year and then decided to do something else and moved to New York. So the issue here is like, if you want to get hired, if this person wants to get hired, I mean, I think they're probably a pretty good general counsel at the moment. But if this person wants to get hired in a law firm, which they may not, the resume needs to look focused on litigation. And so it's actually a good resume for litigation, but it has to have a focus on, doing nothing but litigation. So the way to do that would be you really want to, if you have an interest in helping immigrants and different types of people, that's actually a good background, but it's not necessarily something that's going to help you get a job at a law firm. It will help you get a job with the government. It will help you get a job with public interest organizations. It will help you do a lot of different things. But in terms of moving into a law firm, I don't think that's what you want to do. I think this person is more interested in probably in public interest than anything else. And that's good. I mean, that's actually very good. The world needs people like this. But if that's what you want to do, if you want to do public interest, my advice to you would be to, you can do some kind of interesting things. Like, I talked about ChatGPT earlier, and you can plug this. You could actually plug your resume into ChatGPT, and I'm just going to show you what I would do because it's kind of fun. You can plug your resume into ChatGPT, like all this stuff. Let me see right here, and you could say, could you make this resume look more focused on litigation in general instead of public interest? I mean, I'm just giving you a set of public interest. And I don't know what it's going to come up with, but let's see what happens. It's actually thinking about it. So it's your memory. Okay, so see, it's going in and it's trying to focus your resume a lot more. And look at this. I mean, it's pretty awesome, like what we're able to do. So we take your resume and we took and I hope this helps a lot. So we take your resume and instead of being kind of geared towards public interest and so forth, suddenly it becomes, let me make sure I put up the resume. Instead of a resume that is kind of all over the place, and again, this is very powerful. I hope, let me just make sure I'm sharing the right screen. Resumes for review. Okay, here we go. Instead of kind of being all over the place like it was here, we can take the resume here, and I don't know, where you're a general counsel, but you take your resume and you do this, and suddenly, it's changed it a lot, and it's made it, pleadings, discovery, trial, settlement. So we've made sure that we've done whatever we can to make it look, more focused on what you're doing and litigation. So this litigated wide range of cases. So we're making you an agency trial attorney. We're making you look like a litigator, like you have all this experience doing litigation. And that's much more powerful than what it was before. So, I can't make judgments about whether or not you should be doing what you're doing. But here we just take your resume and, I probably would take this off. We take your resume and we make it look, more, look at this. Suddenly, like a litigation resume. Your in-house job is a litigation resume. This is all about litigation. So everything becomes, and again, I didn't do this, ChatGPT did, and I'm recommending that you plug your experience into ChatGPT and make it look more like it's related to one practice area. But here we go. Everything's about freaking litigation. So what's so nice about that is, we've taken something that was previously, kind of all over the place, and ChatGPT has managed to turn it into something that's about litigation. And so that would be my advice to you, because all the experience that you have is related to litigation. And so, why wouldn't you want to make, why wouldn't you give yourself a resume that reflects that? And suddenly, here we are, someone that has gone to a great law school and has made all these career choices that may not be related to litigation. We've made this person into a litigator. So now with this new resume, you'll be able to get a job, probably if you're in Nebraska and you want to work for a litigation firm. You'll be able to get protect family law disputes. That's probably related. You've taken your resume and made it all into something about litigation. And so, I've done what I've done here for resumes, but I would encourage everyone to make sure whatever you're doing is, you look focused, because now, if I was a law firm in Nebraska where there aren't a lot of attorneys, and I saw someone that approached me who was that wanted to do litigation, you can get a job. Now, let me just make a few, observations about, different practice areas. So litigation, if you are a litigator, you can always get a job, because litigation is like more than 50% of, more, probably 70% of what attorneys do is litigation. So, this resume now is actually, before it was just kind of like, I was like, what the hell do I do with it? But now, after plugging it into ChatGPT, everything is about litigation. So look at this was before, it was about all this other stuff. It was about, things that have nothing to do, it doesn't come out and strike you as a litigation related resume. So now it is. And then we even forgot about this. So you would plug this into ChatGPT, you'd say the same thing with this experience. Let me just do that and I'll come back to this screen. I'll just do it on my own. I know you're not gonna be able to see my screen. Here we go, plug that in, and I'll do the same thing. It's just writing it now, I'm gonna plug it in. Okay, so here you go. So I just plugged this into ChatGPT. All I asked it to do with your first year experience, which I know is open on your screen. Let me just see here. This is review. Okay, all I asked it to do with this is I just told it to, make it litigation focused. And so you can see here that now we go through your resume, and this is actually an excellent litigation resume now. And it's not like, it's not like making you look like what you're really interested in, which is okay. It's not looking as much like, oh, I plugged in the wrong place. It's not looking as much like you're into public interest and all these other things you're interested in. It's making you look like the litigator, which is what you are. So, everything here now becomes about, did I plug in the right one? I think I did. Oh, yeah, this is, so everything is about litigation. So everyone needs to think about their resumes this way. You need to think about, like, how can I focus my resume on one thing as opposed to many things? And by the way, all of these edited resumes, you'll be able to go and see them, when this recording is put up, which will be in a few days. But I just, all these changes that are made here make this person look like one thing and not many things. And so that will get you a job. If you're applying for a job in Nebraska to be a litigator, I don't care where you are, but there's going to be people that could use you. And your experience suddenly looks awesome. And this is what you want people to see. You want them to see one thing instead of many things. Even though you may be interested in a lot of different things, it's actually good to look like, you're interested in one thing. And look at, what a mess this was before. It's all this stuff. Now it's so much easier to read, and you don't have all of this like detail about real estate leases and all this stuff. It's just all about litigation, and you will get a job. You can get a job in a law firm, and a job in a company if you want to do litigation. And that's really what you are as a litigator. So I hope that helps. I mean, those are some major changes that you can make forgot about this, to your resume. That'll be very helpful. Okay, I'll look at this resume real quickly too, before we take a break. I'm just trying to make sure I'm helping as many people as I possibly can, because I want you guys to girls to get jobs. Okay, so again, like none of this, and there's no fancy formatting. It's not going to help you. It's going to hurt you. You don't want to, all of this information. I mean, this person went to University of Minnesota, which is like a great law school, and PhD is very, very smart person, and an MA, and like, wow, very, very smart person, and, lots of stuff. But, all of these things, that you awards, no one cares. I would just, what did you do? You got a BA. I don't think radio and television broadcasting is relevant. I think that all of these other things are, but these belong at the end, not there. A lot of people want to list their district court admissions. Those aren't a big deal because someone's just going to admit you, when you have a case there, contact information, that's fine. Okay, same thing. So this person has, over 30, you don't want to highlight that you're, a late stage attorney. You don't need to summarize that. You certainly don't want to call yourself an administrator if you're trying to get a job in a law firm. All that stuff needs to come out. You don't need the summary. What the hell happened? Okay, so then we get into legal experience. Again, you don't need to say legal. It's obvious. So, job of an attorney, to shorten everything. And all of this is related to litigation. When this person graduated from law school? No date. So it's okay when you're an older attorney to put the date you graduated. The problem in not putting the date when you graduated, this is some, something, that I say to everyone is, you should behave with distinction. You don't want to lead people down paths that make them think you're something else. Everything needs to be summarized. The problem with not putting your graduation date on is, it's like you're hiding your age, and your age is going to be obvious anyway from the dates you work. So why not just be honest about your age? It's not a big deal. It's it's like saying, like, I don't want you to discriminate because of your age, and it's better just to put your date on there. Okay, so general practice attorney from 1982 to 1985. Okay, I'm going to think about that. But the thing that needs to happen with these dates on your resume, is that this needs to go at the end. So all this stuff needs to be reorganized. So your first job, like the one you're doing now, is this person even working? Okay, the job you're doing now needs to be related. And it looks like you stopped working 20 years ago. Is that what's going on? Okay, that's apparently what's going on. Wait, maybe not. Let's see. Okay, so this is a good example of an academic resume. This person graduated. Okay, so I get these questions all the time. People, you remove this. People come to us or have questions about getting jobs after a career in academia. And, if you haven't been, I don't know what it means. If you haven't been and worked in the legal profession, a law firm, or, in a company for 20 years and you're pursuing another career, that shows where your passion is. And your passion is in academics. That's why you got a PhD. That's your passion. So, you can shorten all this. You can plug this into ChatGPT. I'll come back in a second. Shorten it. Give me 1 second. And all I'm doing is I'm going into ChatGPT. I guess I'll share my screen so you can see. I'm going to ChatGPT. I'm going to say, can you make this more litigation? So this person, I'm plugging this into ChatGPT, and here, I'm just changing your experience. And this is just awesome because you can see, like, we're making, instead of trying to make you into multiple things, we're making you into something that's focused on one thing. So everyone should understand. And then, very surprised this very long webinar. Almost everyone's up here. Very interesting, I guess. But this resume suddenly, you take all this information and you change it using ChatGPT like I just did, and you get this. So person, litigation, so then, you're a litigator instead of whatever, and then, motions, advocate for clients. And I hope everyone can see this, and you should, whatever your resume is, you need to make it look focused on one practice area. And I just did it very quickly through ChatGPT to show you how that would be done. I would spend more time if someone was doing a call with me, but this is all litigation. So, which is great. So now this person looks like a litigator. But I'm going to give everyone kind of a little bit of a talk here right now, because it is important about, what are you doing in your career? Where's your passion? What should you be doing? And, the thing I would say, a lot of people go and get PhDs, study things, become law professors and all this sort of thing. And those are career choices. That's your passion. So, why do something that's not your passion? Why try to come back to a career that's not your passion? Obviously, you started in 1985 and you did it for 20 years, but then you were gone. You just you didn't like it anymore. You did something else. And so now you go into all this experience, like just doing all these different things in education, because that's where your passion is. And I would caution anybody to do their best to follow their heart, do what they want. I mean, it's crazy. Like, why would you want to come back to, and you wrote all these papers when you're an academic, and that's your strength. I mean, this is crazy. Look at these presentations and papers. This is very good academic. I just don't recommend anybody trying to enter the practice of law or go back if you're not passionate about it. If you don't like what you're doing, you're not going to be good at it. And this particular person very much enjoys being a academic. I mean, that's what it's about. So again, I'm just going to real quickly do this for everyone's benefit to show you what I would do. I'll go back into ChatGPT and I will say, can you shorten this, and make it more direct and manner. A law firm, I would say law firm would be likely to like this person for a litigation job. So I'm going to plug all of your experience, that your 2 decades of experience into a ChatGPT and shorten it. So academic resumes are often very long. They're long because part of being an academic is making sure that you want to talk about all your papers and you want to talk about all the work you've done. But when people look at that, they're just like, what the hell's going on? Like, they don't understand. So you would go here and let me see resume review, and you could take all of this, your life's work. And I'm sorry, I mean, this is what it is, but you can take your life's work, and you can, what the hell just happened? Something I messed up. Let me open your document. I'm going to read this. So I just want everyone to see. So this is this person's education experience. It just goes on and on and on and on. And no law firm, I'm sorry, is going to take the time to read all this. It's too much. It's not something that they're going to be interested in reading. So what I just did is I took all that experience. I'm going to share the screen. I took all this academic experience, and instead of all that long stuff, I just put in, here. I just shortened it. I made it easier to read and put in a little thing about academic experience and some publications. I don't think you need all your publications and presentations and shorten it. I mean, the objective is to make your resume easy to read and something that people are going to, something that people are going to pay attention to. So you shorten it. You shorten all that stuff using the example I gave you. You may not want to do it. I mean, you are an academic, and I want to give everyone just a couple of pointers. If you're an academic, or if you love academics and things like that, that's what you should be doing. The law professors would get eaten alive in 95% of all law firms because they don't think that way. They're theoretical. They're interested in a theory and not necessarily practical stuff. Being a lawyer is very practical. You have to take legal issues and boil them down to very simplistic things. And that's what's valued by law firms. But to clients, they don't want to pay for lots of intellectual thought and so forth. So in terms of your resume, I think you could be a law professor. I think you could be all these different things, but and you can see how we shortened your resume here. I like that. But at the same time, let's see if I can put away. Yeah, so this is how I cleaned it up, just so you can see. You just clean it up like this. You make it shorter. You don't put a lot of detail in there, and then just make it like that instead of all this. So I would caution anyone who's interested in other things to do them, not to try practicing law. Now let's take a look at this one. Okay, so the first thing is you don't need, is this an American attorney even? Greece. Okay, I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this because this person's from another country. And I can't really give advice to someone who's from a foreign country because I don't know what it takes to get a job there. But again, no one needs Microsoft Word, Excel. You don't, this is way too much certifications. This person took a lot of classes in the US, which obviously they are interested in what they're doing, which is nice. You don't put continued bottom. And, if you're a foreign attorney, I'll just be upfront with you. All this stuff comes out, so everyone's aware of that. If you're a foreign attorney, it's pretty much impossible. And, you take off your picture, you don't want that. Take off all this. And, and by the way, it's analyzing wrong, all this stuff, and you just concentrate on your experience. That's it. So you don't need all this other stuff that kind of, distracts people from the main message. Is there anything else? Did we look at this one? Look at that picture. Okay, so, all right. So this resume, again, you don't want to use all these colors. You don't need that. Certifications, working in California, you don't need to talk about that. Languages, that's fine. You don't need to put you're a US citizen. You don't need to put all this. Okay, so this person actually worked for a major American law firm. And when this person worked there, this was kind of a big deal. Okay, so this is an in-house resume. There's not a lot I can offer here to help you. You've been worked in solo practitioner and all these jobs, and then you've started a company. It's like, and all this stuff comes off. People, again, I just want everyone to understand, you don't need to tell people what your skills are. You don't need to put your picture. You don't need to use different colors. You don't need to have a summary. You don't need to have, all of this information. Now you're doing litigation as a solo practitioner. Now you're doing, corporate. Now you're doing investment management, corporate related work. Now you're doing corporate. Now you're doing, founding your own companies. So there's just a couple points that I want to make to people too. So you have different types of people in the world. You have people that want to work for other people, and that's what makes them excited. They feel they like the structure of working for other people. They want to sit down and work for other people and do what that person wants and get better and better at their job, which is great. That's 80% of all people. Then you have people who don't necessarily want to work for other people. They like to start businesses and move around and work in different countries and so forth. And this is a very exciting resume. It's a very exciting life. But, at the same time, now they're in Vietnam. So, if you're going to get hired by a law firm, you need to, you really need to figure out, like, how are you going to shorten this resume and make it look like you're more likely to be to get hired by a law firm. Like, what do you do to focus your resume like that? So it's the same thing that we've talked about with a lot of these different resumes. It's like you have to make the resume look like you do one thing. So can you make this resume look like a person focused on corporate law, and shorten it and only highlight it? Okay, so let's see what happens here. You can see here, what we're doing here is, we're taking this person and making them look all corporate, and that's improving the resume. It's also much shorter, and Graham and James, I don't even know how to pick that up. That's insane, because but it's crazy. So they didn't have Graham and James on the resume. Graham and James was actually absorbed by Squire Sanders. So it's fascinating that the ChatGPT knew that it was Graham and James, even though I don't think it was put in there. So this resume now, you take this, you boil it down, and then you make it look more focused on one thing. So what I did here, I don't even know what's going to copy, but see all this experience here, years and years of experience. Then you take this and plug it in. It's not showing it, so I'll just do a blank page here. Show you what it looks like. Share the screen. Give me 1 second. I think this is it. Make sure this is it. Okay, so this is what I did to the resume. I took all this experience and I just in the ChatGPT. I made it much shorter. I made it corporate related. And the thing everyone needs to understand is, like, when someone's reading your resume, like, the last thing in the world that they want to see is a lot of detail. Like, they don't need to know, like, all these different things and each additional thing you did. They just want to see something short that's going to make sense to them. And this is, what I did, and to make it shorter. And all I did here was I'll just give you the instructions again, what I did, so you can see. All I said to ChatGPT, I'm not showing my screen right now, but I will show my screen actually for a second in ChatGPT. So all I did is I took this, just years and years of experience right here. I plugged into ChatGPT and it came out with this. And I just asked them and there's no need for all of this. This is just too much information. Like, no one's going to read it. Like, do you honestly think someone's going to sit down and read all this stuff? I mean, I know you're very proud of it, and that's what people do. But at the same time, you don't need all this information. So all I said here was, can you make this resume look like the person is focused on corporate law and short to only highlight corporate related experience? Now I'm going to show you something really, really cool right now. And this is going to be awesome. Again, this is one of these things, like, if you do it, will make you much more employable than now. And this is something that all corporate attorneys should do. This is something that all real estate attorneys should do. And this is stuff that doesn't belong on your resume, but you can do something much more powerful. So you take this resume and you got these changes here that I made, right? So then you can say, can you create, instead of what you wrote there, can you create a transaction sheet for this resume? And again, this is going to just blow you away. So, and this is something that everyone that's a corporate or other type of attorney should do. So watch this. Actually, it's not doing it. Nope. Can you export resume? And one of those. I'm going to see if it does it. I mean, you can play around with it if it doesn't. Look how cool this is. It's like thinking about, trying to figure out how to do it. And everyone should be using ChatGPT for their resumes, by the way. And maybe it won't do it. Maybe it'll take too long. But give me 1 second. All right. Well, maybe it's just too much. Who knows? Oh, wait, this is actually the wrong resume for this. Excuse me, I should have done this. But anyway, I don't want to waste everyone's time in this call. It's not even the right one. Yeah, I did the wrong one. So give me 1 second. And I'm just showing. So corporate attorneys, real estate attorneys, and all those sorts of different people. Wow, transaction sheet. Can you create a transaction sheet? So what attorneys that have been practicing a long time should do, and what corporate attorneys and real estate attorneys should do, is you should never list all of your transactions and things on your resume. Instead, what you need to do is every corporate attorney, every real estate attorney, every transactional attorney should always create a separate document on their resume. Instead of listing all of your transactions on your resume, you should always create a separate document that contains your, what you've done. And that separate document would be your transaction sheet. So, oh, here we go. Here we go. Download the detailed transaction sheet. Let's see what happens here. Transaction sheet. Oh my God. It did it as a, no idea why I did that. Can you create this Word document? And I'm trying to, anybody who's a corporate or real estate or transactional attorney, you need to take all of the transactions like this off of your resume, and then you need to put them into a, here we go, download transaction sheet. Oh my God. Detailed transaction sheet. Save. Let's see. Here we go. Now, I don't know how well ChatGPT did this, but I guess we'll see. Okay, well, this is not a good transaction sheet, but the idea would be that you would create, a list of different transactions, and this is a transaction sheet, but something like this that you could put, and this is a, transaction sheet. But the idea is that your resume contains your experience and general description, and then this becomes your transaction sheet. Now you can tell ChatGPT, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not sharing the right screen. I apologize. Give me 1 second. Okay. You can tell, this is the example of the transaction sheet that ChatGPT did. So you can tell ChatGPT to do a transaction sheet. So all I did was I plugged in this person's existing resume and it created this transaction. Now, how cool is this? 55 million, multi-million dollar, all this, and you list your transactions. Now you don't do it this way. You would probably just, you would, whatever, you would, shorten it and so forth and make these single spaces. But now you have a transaction sheet. So instead of putting that on your resume, you have a separate document that goes at the end. And this is what the best corporate attorneys, the best real estate attorneys, all these people do, because they're actually very proud of all of their transactions. And so these are, you might even call these sample transactions or something, but you can see how cool it is that ChatGPT was able to extract from your resume, which was just crazy. Let's take a look at it. Maybe we have it here. Oh my God, what's going on here? But these are all the things this is your resume. If you can see, I don't know why I copied it like this, but you had all the stuff here. Instead, you just extracted it and put it on something like this. Very, very powerful. So you need to use ChatGPT on your resume because frankly, it's a hell of a lot smarter than you. And all this work with extracting these transactions could have taken you a day. And now here they are. And instead of all this information, role, location, company, all these sorts of things, totally cool. I love it. So that makes your resume so much better than it was before. I mean, you've taken your resume and you've turned it into like, this freaking superstar resume, when before it was just kind of this thing, that was very difficult to read and so forth. Okay, let's see. I'd like to take a break at some point, but let me just see here if there's any additional resumes that we can look at. Probably not. Okay, well, I think I've gone through most of the resumes and given everyone, some good pointers about how to do things. And I like all these resumes. Every single one of these resumes, by the way, we've made better, and we've made it better by following best practices, which are focusing on one thing. When they're complex, we've managed to drill down and make them less complex. Let me just see here. Did we do anything on this resume? Oh, that's a paralegal. Every single resume is now awesome. which I like. So every attorney, I mean, no matter who you are, you have the ability to really have a very, very good resume if you follow these best practices. Okay, so we'll take a break just for a few minutes, and then what we'll do is what's going on with this one. All right, well, when we're done, we will come back and I'll look at a couple other resumes, and then we'll take questions. So anybody that's asked questions that I can answer during the call, then we'll go through those. But I'm very impressed with everyone for watching this and hopefully taking notes about really how to make your resume a lot better. Because there's, this is there's a lot going on here with resumes and a lot of ways to improve them. And, just as an example I gave at the beginning, like some of these resumes I improved by 2 times, some of them I improved by 3 times, some of them I improved by 5 times, some of them I improved by 10 times. And so, that 10 times improvement means you're going to get 10 times more jobs just by following this advice. It's very, very simple. I mean, if you follow this advice and you make yourself look focused and you reduce all this nonsense into just something that's very direct, you're going to do very, very well in your career. All right, so we'll take a quick break just for like very, very short break. I will, during the break, what I'll do is I'll come back and I will see if there's any additional resumes. Probably what I'll do first, though, is I'll get through the questions because I think people have a lot of questions, and I'll answer those questions. And then we'll, hopefully from there, we'll be able to have a really good workshop. So just a minute or two, and we'll come back and start working on more resumes and questions. Thanks. All right, here we go. So now I will do the Q&A. And, just as a side note, I can't tell you how unbelievably I'm impressed with everyone that's on this call, because, the most important thing that you can do is improve and learn how to improve and take advice and, seek out experts and all that sort of thing. And, very, very few people want advice or are willing to take advice. And, your ability to, stay in the call, it's like over 4 hours is amazing, because you're hungry for information and to improve. And you should be. I mean, graduating from law school and or going to law school is a big choice. And just hold on a second. I've got an issue. I have birds. Yeah, it's a bird. It's here. She needs a lot of attention. Jeez. Okay, so let's go to the questions and answers. Just give me 1 second here to make sure I'm sharing the right screen. Okay. But yeah, I mean, just honestly, just amazing the people that take the time to watch this sort of stuff. I wish when I was starting out that I knew what I knew now, because I've been doing this for 25 years, and my whole livelihood and that of my family is dependent on understanding this. I'm obviously very passionate about it, but your ability to, let's see, is very, very important. Okay, let me just see here. Okay, here we go. Here's the first question. I noticed on LinkedIn that for certain people list their certifications or specializations they have on following their name. Where should you list this? Should it be under law school information? Yes, should be at the end. So all those certifications and so forth should always go at the end of your resume. You never want to put them on top. That's just, no, you don't put them on top. I mean, we saw a lot of examples today where people put the stuff, that weren't, you put it at the end. You don't need to put it in front of your name. And those certifications, by the way, I don't know how difficult they are to get, but it's not something you need to put there. Okay, if you have a gap in your resume because you were caregiving or caretaking for a parent, had a medical issue for several years, in your opinion, should you put something about that or should you leave it out? I think personally, look at this bird. But I think personally that you can just have a gap in your resume. If you put, you can put, taking care of children or something along those lines if you want. But a lot of times, if you're a woman, especially, and there's a gap, people will just assume that you went to have kids and now you want to come back. And that's perfectly normal. It's actually respected. I think that you're just as likely to get a job if you have that break than if you didn't. I've seen firms be very, very respectful of that. So I don't think that that's something that you, let's slip up. I don't think that's something that you need to, really worry about too much on your resume. Sometimes people have gaps just because they were unemployed. I've seen people with gaps because they went to prison, not attorneys, but people I've interviewed for other jobs in the past. But you can put something out about it in your resume. But if people ask, typically you'll want people to ask in the interviews, and then if they ask you about it, then you can answer. But sometimes just leaving the gap there is okay. And then people may ask you why you haven't worked. But obviously, it's it's better not to have a gap than to have a gap. So you can often put information in about why you're gone. But in my opinion, I would leave it out. Sorry, give me a second. Okay, so here's another question. This person says, I'm confused because every resume advice is always to give you examples of what you've done, quantify it when possible. You're just listing business name and job title. We don't need to tell what we did at those jobs. Yes, I mean, you need to tell. You tell what you did, but you don't have to go into a ton of detail. So what does that mean? That means if you were an employment attorney for a big firm for 3 years, you can list you did employment and maybe, say about it, but pretty much everybody knows what it means to be an employment attorney at a big firm. You don't need to talk in a lot of detail. The point of your resume is to make it one page, and then to make sure that whatever you do, that you're making it have a theme. Like, so people look at it, like you've seen all the examples I gave today where we went through resumes and we highlighted different types of, experience of things. I mean, the experience in one practice area. So you tell what you did, but you don't have to go into a lot of detail. And then the big thing is like I said, for corporate, real estate, different types of transactional attorneys, you really are better off having a transaction sheet. So let me see if I can help you with how that would work. Sorry, give me a second here. Okay. So you really want to, give me 1 second here. When you're, I'm going into another screen here. Give me 1 second. I'm just trying to show people different practice areas and what you should be doing with your resume. Share, give me a second to share. And a lot of questions. I mean, I'm glad there's so much interest in this. I'm just very, very impressed with people that are taking the time to do this. Okay. Jesus. Okay, so these are different practice areas. And then, one of the things I would stress to everyone is there literally are hundreds of practice areas. So certain practice areas, you don't need to put a lot of detail on your resume, but you can do a transaction sheet. So, firms that, things where you could do transactional related sheets or practice areas, sometimes would be bankruptcy. So if you were doing restructuring, you could have a transaction sheet or different types of bankruptcy that you did. If you were doing developer agreements and transactions and construction, you can do the same thing. Most corporate related practice areas. And I want to show you, by the way, how incredibly, number of practice areas. So if you did M&A, you would have things. If you did, private equity, you would do things. And you would list your transactions, not on your resume, but in a transaction sheet. A lot of people want to do data privacy. That's transactional. So you could list different data privacy related things you did. Same thing with energy. Oil and gas, transactional, environmental land use has, land use and zoning. You could do it with transactions, what else? Health law, same thing, anything that's compliance and transaction related. So all I'm trying to show everyone is there's all these different types of practice areas. And if they're transactional in nature, instead of listing all of this information on your resume, you have a transaction. So real estate, commercial transactions, or, tax, you could do, some different transactions and things you may have done in tax or different types of work. But the point is, you don't want to bog down the reader with lots of different things that may not necessarily all be related to, the reason I keep doing this, I got the bird here, all be related to, that aren't necessary to put in there. So when I'm talking about like not giving specific examples, like if you do litigation, every litigator does discovery, every litigator does motions. Some litigators go to court, others don't. But you want to, it's just people understand what it is. And so anybody that's reading it, that's looking at your resume, will already know what you do. So there's no point in really giving them a lot of detail. Many times the detail you give will draw attention to what you didn't do. Somebody wanted me to look at their resume. Someone asked, send resume to. Okay, so this person says, I live in the tri-state area. This is a good question. For firms are looking for attorneys barred in multiple jurisdictions, should you put your barred jurisdictions on your resume? Yeah, so if you're in New York and you're barred in Jersey, et cetera, you should put your different barred missions there. Law firms like to see that.